racist. In fact, if you even criticise any element of the immigration policies of the last two governments, you're racist. And yet the Home Secretary, Shubham Mahmood, tries to copy our policies.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British.
Britain is being invaded. Thousands of fighting-age men from countries that despise Britain continue to arrive on our beaches. Our plan is the only appropriate response to a national security emergency. Immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists.
We can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline.
To accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to the home of Common Sense. It is Talk. Lots to get through here on the programme. You heard it here first yesterday. Keir Starmer attacking Nigel Farage during his Labour conference speech, branding him a snake oil merchant and Reform UK as enemies of national renewal who are promoting racist policies. Farage fired back, of course, accusing Starmer of endangering Reform campaigners by fueling the radical left. We'll look at your responses on that and also asking that question. Who will be the next Prime Minister? I've got a bit of a curveball for you here, by the way. Also this afternoon, a super dinghy carrying 100 migrants arrived in the UK at the same time Keir Starmer was vowing to tackle the migrant crisis. It's almost somebody choreographed this, Arlene Phillips style. Right, bang, off you go, cue and action. Over 33,000 crossings this year. Smugglers are now using larger boats imported from China, Kel surprise, to maximise profits. We'll have more on that as well. And the US government begins a shutdown, leaving 750,000 federal employees unpaid and costing $400 million daily. Key services continue, but clashes over healthcare spending fuel the standoff. National parks, airports and public services face major disruptions. We're across the whole thing right here on Talk. Lots to get through, everything you need to know and all the breaking news right here on Talk. And as you might have heard during the news there, the ringleader of the grooming gang in Rochdale who raped 2 schoolgirls has just been jailed for 35 years. About time too, and thank goodness for one of the harshest of sentences. There are other preferable ways to deal with people like this, but 35 years for the ringleader of the grooming gang in Rochdale. More details as that emerges. So here's the thing. And I know when I say who's going to be the next Prime Minister, you might say, well, it's not going to be Keir Starmer, and therefore by default it's probably going to be Nigel Farage. But could it be somebody else? I don't know. You might have another idea. Who could come up from the sort of curveball territory of the political spectrum? The Starmer speech yesterday was, of course, in most respects, exactly what we imagined it would be. He spoke at length and said nothing. I mean, this is my Prime Minister, your Prime Minister. I didn't so much want some meat on the bones. I wanted a carcass of details, a full-on mammoth's worth. I wanted some U-turns. I wanted some emissions. I wanted to hear a man who meant business. Could this be the moment that Starmer turns a corner? I mean, it was perhaps a stupid idea that I might get any of this, but nonetheless, I sat there with a bag of optimism around me, in taking every moment and hoping there would be something. In the event, I got none of these things. I just got a tirade of vacuous platitudes and a good old dose of left-wing hate towards those who dare to have a different opinion. Farage, snake oil salesman, his policies are racist, doesn't like Britain, doesn't believe in Britain. I mean, the list went on. It was lousy stuff. It was low stuff. It was not the whole thing that Lammy is saying today, oh, you know, we fight the issues, not the man. No, you didn't. You fought the man yesterday. And by the way, there will be some of you, the odd left-wing meerkat, whose ears have just popped up going, you're making this up, Collins, aren't you? You're exaggerating what Keir Starmer said. Well, let's have a listen. Just to clarify, in case you haven't heard it so far, let's specifically have a reminder of what Keir Starmer said yesterday.
We can all see these snake oil merchants on the right, on the left, but be in no doubt conference, none of them have any interest in national renewal, because decline is good for their business. I mean, think about it. When was the last time that you heard Nigel Farage say anything positive about Britain's future? He can't. He doesn't like Britain, doesn't believe in Britain, wants you to doubt it just as much as he does.
Well, he says a lot of things positive about Britain's future, Mr. Starmer, but just a one that you're not in. I think you might have misread the entire point of politics there. There was a response. It came very, very quickly from Nigel Farage. Have a listen.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists.
Well, there it was, 0344 499 1000. Who will be the next Prime Minister of the UK? Do you know what I was thinking with all of this going on? Reform are not yet the perfectly formed package, and house points all round for this, they're not purporting to yet be the fully formed package. There's a lot to be said. Their whole point of looking at immigration, foreign nationals' right to remain and all of that, it was a bit clunky. It hasn't, it will change, but the principle was there. The principle was to be, we will go big on immigration, and we'll go big on people that are not meant to be in this country, and we'll go big on people who are abusing the fact they've been given the right to stay in this country. That is not a racist policy. It's not even a controversial policy. It is literally, quite literally, the dictionary definition of the duty, almost the first duty of a government. To keep your nation safe and to keep it affordable, and for taxpayers and the like. And if you come to this country and you came on some lousy visa that wasn't worth the paper it was written on, it gave you some kind of tenuous right to remain, the idea that you might check back in on that individual and say, how's that visa thing going? How's your part of the arrangement, Mr. Worker? Let's have a look. Oh, you came in 5 years ago, haven't done a day's work ever since. You've actually been entitled to 50,000 quid a year in terms of welfare or whatever the issue might be. That is not a reasoned case or a reasonable case for you to remain in the UK. There's nothing strange about that. That is the duty of a government. So there's that. So, yeah, it's a bit clunky over there at Reform. They've only just got started. We're 4 years away from an election. It's an utter disaster zone, by the way, over at Labour right now. And do you know what? In any other world, the Tories should be the ones going, this is fantastic. Kemi Badenoch should be munching on popcorn by the hour watching this thing play out and say, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to come up fast right in the middle of these two parties, and we're going to blow apart the entire polarity of what we are currently seeing. That should be the case. I'm not sensing necessarily Kemi Badenoch can pull this one off. We'll find out what their conference offers in a few days' time. We have Chloe Dobbs back with us to talk through the big stories of the day. Afternoon to you, Chloe.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you. It was the snake oil salesman comment. What did it seems?
Well, I mean, that to me seemed like one of the milder comments that came out of party conference. A lot of people who are actually there and have analysed Starmer's speech have said, actually, this is the best speech that he's ever given. But you don't really see it anywhere in the headlines because...
Where did they get that from? What were they listening to? What were they listening to?
Well,
they said, it's the best speech he's ever given.
Well, he did speak for a whole hour, so it wasn't just the snake oil comment that got clipped.
Being fluent and sounding half intelligent doesn't make you a good speaker.
Well, I'm saying relative to his other performances, that this was one of his better ones. He actually sounded vaguely fluent and vaguely optimistic and tried to actually give his party an idea of what he stands for. But that's completely disappeared in the press because it's being completely filled with him saying that Nigel Farage's policy is racist, and also David Lammy's Hitler Youth comment. What on earth was that? That completely... I mean, if you went on Twitter yesterday, every single post seemed to be about it. Everybody was talking about this. So nobody was talking about any of the great things that Keir Starmer said in his speech. So that they ruined it for themselves. They could have... This was a great opportunity, this conference, for them to show that they are serious and they are competent. And they've shown that they're just, you know, behaving like children, resorting to name-calling and making completely false claims about Farage. And they say that they're, the party of unity as opposed to the alternative that is division, whilst also then saying, you know, David Lammy saying that Farage flirted with Hitler Youth when he was younger. That's division. That's division, 100%. Trying to associate someone with fascism and the Nazis, calling their policies racist. And it may be tempting to call their policies racist when... Bear in mind, they're surrounded by Labour Party members at this conference who are typically more left-wing ideologically than your average Labour voter as opposed to a member. They know that the audience is going to lap that sort of thing up. But actually, the signal that sends to everyone in the country who is either planning to vote reform or was thinking about switching is... the Labour Party think that I am racist if I want there to be some basic border control and a system where you can't just come here and sponge off the state. And that is going to put a lot of people off. And also it makes them look desperate. You've seen it at both the Lib Dem conference and the Labour conference that they are completely obsessed with Nigel Farage and talking about him so much. It shows how terrified they are of him. It doesn't make them look like they're strong opposition to Nigel. It looks like they haven't got anything to show for themselves, so they're just having to point fingers and call names.
Couple of points on that. I mean, the David Lammy thing was, I mean, if it wasn't so kind of low and dark in the nature of his accusation, it would just be funny. But then he couldn't find it in him to, let's say, sorry, could he? He said, oh, now Mr. Farage has now clarified the comments and I'm happy with that. Well, OK, you're not apologising for bringing it up. He's only clarifying it because he was forced to clarify it because you...
Clearly his lawyers have been on the phone and been like, David Lammy, you do another interview to the BBC and you set the record straight. But you could tell he didn't really want to because, as you say, he just said, oh, Nigel Farage denies this, so I'll accept that. And he also said, oh, but I did say it's up to the public to decide. No, no, no. When he was asked, is Nigel Farage a racist, he said, I'll leave it up to the public to decide whether a man who flirted with Hitler Youth when he was younger is a racist. So he didn't leave it up to the public to decide whether he was involved with Hitler Youth. He left it up to them to decide if he's racist, given that what he was stating as some sort of fact.
I also wonder when it comes to political speeches, and Starmer delivered exactly the speech I knew he was going to deliver. Obviously, you know, was a very senior lawyer. There's no doubt he can string a sentence together. He's not nervous about standing in front of a crowd.
Well, he normally seems very nervous.
But well, I thought on this occasion
he seemed a bit more relaxed.
It was it was kind of what I hear from politicians and in the Tory party as well all the time. It was very kind of clinical. It was neat and tidy. It was clipped. It was all in its place. It said what he wanted to say. But if you were coming down from another planet for the first time ever, looking at, you know, political leaders and their speeches, you'd listen to that and go, you know, the word vanilla would be jumping off the screen at you. There's nothing great there, and I know that some of this is because the new media age we live in, we're a bit more discerning. We need politicians to kind of up a gear a little bit, and that's not always a good thing, because just because you're a snappy performer and you can be a bit lively and a bit natural, that also doesn't necessarily make you a great politician. But you need a bit of that, and you don't get that with Starmer.
No, you don't. It worked when they were in opposition, because coming from Corbyn was a big personality, but consequently the Tories were able to paint Corbyn as something scary.
Yeah.
When they just had this vanilla Keir Starmer, it's quite hard to paint just a boring managerial bloke as some, scary, as some kind of sort of scary communist, because that was how the Tories stayed in power so long, as they said, oh, you know, you might be upset with how we failed, but you could end up with this terrifying Corbyn if you vote for Labour. And so that's how people always voted for the Tories. But with Starmer, it was a little bit harder for the Tories to do that. But now he's in power, his speeches, well, any time he speaks, it just feels so managerial and monotone, and it doesn't excite people when you've got, you know, the leader of Reform being a very good speaker and coming across very charismatic. That's losing them a lot of votes. And also, they liked Starmer because they thought, oh, we can, you know, the trade unions, the backbenchers, they thought, oh, we can just get him to do what he wants, because he doesn't know what he stands for and he's just a puppet. But that's starting to really frustrate the public, who feel like there's no conviction and they don't know what this man stands for. Whereas Nigel Farage, you know exactly what he stands for.
Yeah.
And he talks like a normal person. No matter how hard Starmer tries, no matter how many voice coaches he has sneak into number 10.
Doesn't really work.
It's just, he's not born for politics. He's a lawyer. He should have stayed in law. I don't think he's really got his finger on the pulse.
Chloe? What did we learn from this yesterday? There was nothing. I said some meat on the bones. I don't think it's too much to ask. I'm not suggesting that at a party for example, I wouldn't expect the Chancellor to suddenly reveal the budget. I understand that, but you do expect something. You expect a sort of certain amount of, what someone's political ideology is, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what's the burning furnace on the to-do list each day. You want to hear that from a Prime Minister, but you don't really get that with Starmer.
No, you
we certainly
don't.
Didn't get it yesterday.
There were some announcements, but they were they disappeared in the news because of these ridiculous comments about Farage being racist, or his policies being racist, and the Hitler Youth comment. But then some of the things they announced, I kind of thought at a point when the country is broke, you're trying to offer some sort of nugget, but this doesn't make sense at a time that we're trying to save money. So one thing that was announced was that they're going to bring back maintenance grants for university. So when I went to university, I had to have a maintenance loan. I will have to pay that off, and they've decided to say, oh, it'll just be a grant, the government will throw the money to you and you'll never have to pay it off, right? And some people might like the sound of that, but I'm thinking at a time when we are going bankrupt, should we really, this isn't really a necessity. Do we really need to be offering this? But they're trying to offer a little nugget to excite people. And then when he was on stage, he was talking about all the things that he's proud of, like GB Energy. And maybe some people in the room who were Labour members might have lapped that up, and it did go down well with the crowd. But your average member of the public who's looking at their energy bills and seeing them going up, and they're dealing with the cost of living crisis, are thinking, I don't really want us to spend a load of money on GB Energy if that means that in the short run, over the next 5 to 10 years, my bills are actually going to keep going up, especially when they feel betrayed because they were told their bills would come down by 300 quid. So there's a lot that was said that excited the people in the room, but that's very different to what the general public thinks
wider
about
country.
it.
There was also an announcement about nursery places, and they've been crunching the numbers on that, and the criteria for doing well out of this nursery place thing is so narrow. There are some poorer people, if that's the right terminology, who are actually going to be worse off as a result of it. I mean, there's all these little bits, and I understand that. Look, different parties have different announcements, etc. We try to look at the overall package. Comparing Nigel Farage, who was there on standby in an amazing piece of political theatre, that there he was, looking very prime ministerial with 2 union flags behind him, ready to go with a response to this. We've never really seen that before. Kemi Badenoch, this weekend, the Tories will be giving it Billy Big Potatoes at their conference. Could she, and this is a massive leap of imagination, you heard what I said earlier, Chloe, could she suddenly go, hang on, they're having a row over there, they're having a row over there, we're the Tories, I know we mucked up in some areas, we didn't muck up for 14 years, there were parts of it that just wasn't very good, and we're going to come through the middle of this pair, we're going to come out fighting.
That's what...
Kemi Badenoch will be the next Prime Minister. There you go, Chloe, you heard it here first.
I highly, highly doubt it when you've got the new
she will be the next Prime Minister. Stop arguing with me, Chloe.
That's what she thinks. So I was in hysterics when I saw that she did an interview over the past couple of days where she was asked why aren't the Conservatives being spoken about at the Lib Dem conference or the Labour conference. They're obsessed with Farage, and she said, that's because the Lib Dems and Labour know that reform are easily beatable, but they know they're not going to go after me because they know that a renewed Tory party with a new leader is impossible to beat. And I'm thinking, hang on, Kemi, a poll has just come out saying 311 seats for reform and 45 for your party. Do you really think that's just a blip and the Reform Party are the easily beatable ones?
Listen, we're going to take a pause there. Chloe stays with us. Lots more to talk about Shabama Mahmood's new idea for digital ID, which we were told was just a working thing. Apparently it could be a whole lot more. Who'd have thought it? Details coming next right here on Talk.
On the bottom of their shoe. I think that is a problem with Labour.
And they also...
They look down on people, but they're looking down at their own voters who's flocking to reform. You know, this is regular people who's come into reform because they're sick of the Labour government, they're sick of the Conservative.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Who's going to be the next Prime Minister of this country? It might not be a choice between Farage and Starmer. And again, it's interesting we talk in those terms for a new party. Could Kemi Badenoch, could she do one thing that would change the terms of engagement with the electorate? We've got Chloe still with us in the studio. Let's talk about this one because we're familiar with the digital ID story, came around sort of last week. But now the Home Secretary has floated the wider use of national ID cards after Labour pledged that it would only be used, of course, to prove that you could work. She's now suggested that it could be a way of looking at things like the welfare system and whether you are claiming correctly, etc.
Yeah, it's looking like we may well go down the slippery slope if we end up with digital ID, because they're already coming up with these ideas before they bring it in. I mean, if they wanted to do that, it would be better for them if they kept that quiet until they brought it in, you would have thought, because they're putting people off it. I think this is... I think you've got people introducing this who don't genuinely care about personal liberties, and so they just think, oh, it's easier to get your benefits payments and whatnot. That's great. It doesn't click in their head that this is going to be a big concern in terms of liberty and privacy, because as people who aren't typically libertarians in the Labour Party, that just isn't of importance to them, but it's of importance to a lot of people. And a lot of people have said, oh, well, you know, they have... the government, they have your data about your passport, and your landlord has a scan of your passport and this sort of thing. But this is quite different, because if it's the case that I use my digital ID, let's say every time I buy an age-restricted item from a shop, for example, then it might be the case that the government is then holding data of everywhere that I've gone shopping where I've used that. Anywhere that I've used that, they know exactly where I am, they know exactly what I'm buying. And you speak about this proposal of potentially using it for benefits fraud. One thing that I found concerning, apparently HMRC are already doing this. They go through people's social media and their Instagram for signs that they might be wealthier than they make out to be, right?
Nice new car, holiday,
so I don't want it to be the case that, you know, I've bought myself, you know, maybe I've spent 100 quid on some nice new clothes, and then they see that on my digital ID and they go, she's definitely earning way more than she says, and they start coming after me. That kind of scares me. Like, I remember at university when I was trying to apply for a grant to help with my living costs, they wanted to sit down and go through every single line of my bank statement and have me justify everything that I've bought. And that just felt really invasive to me, and I don't really want the government doing that, and I don't want them knowing exactly where I am, exactly what I'm buying.
Do you think there's an appetite, I mean, in your age group, for example, do you think that there's more of an appetite for this than there is in older age groups?
I'm not sure. You'd have to look at some polling on that, to be honest. I think that conversations about privacy are not particularly prominent amongst young people who are too busy chanting from the river to the sea on the street. That's more of their concern, it would seem. It would be interesting to see some polling. I mean, it's hard. I don't want to live in an echo chamber. I do have friends that are left-wing, but it's actually very hard to get an idea of exactly what the average young person thinks when there are so many young left-wing people who won't be friends with me, who won't talk to me, who won't have a conversation with me, very sadly.
Sorry, did you say you had friends that are left-wing?
Yeah,
Can you leave, please? Sorry, there's a certain criteria that's involved in sitting in the studio, Chloe, and it certainly doesn't involve that kind of caper. Some of my best friends are leftists, yeah. Let's finally look at this story. The super dinghy carrying up to 100 migrants reached the UK yesterday. This happened, by the way, when Keir Starmer was giving his speech. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. However, he did say that, you know, he seemed to address how easy it is to stop the boats. If you don't believe him, have a listen to this.
They pretend that we're criticising reasonable concerns about immigration. We have seen that trick conference. So let us spell it out once and for all. Controlling migration is a reasonable goal. But if you throw bricks and smash up private property, that's not legitimate. That is thuggery.
That is not legitimate. That is thuggery. I mean, the boat thing, you really couldn't make up, could you? Because they're now getting bigger boats. The Chinese are supplying these, probably on purpose. I'm sure there's somebody from the Chinese government.
Well, they claim they're cracking down on that, but no signs of it happening.
Oh, this is cobblers, isn't it? We keep hearing this stuff.
We're going to smash the gangs.
We've had
stop the Chinese.
So we had the 125 migrants crossed the channel on one super dinghy. I think that was at the weekend, wasn't it, that happened? And then yesterday we got this 100 migrants on one dinghy. I mean, precarious stuff to get in one of those. I get that, but goodness me, he's not in control of this, is he, Starmer?
Absolutely not.
In
and
any shape or form.
there was a good graph in the Telegraph article on this where you can see in the first 400 days in office how many votes have come. Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson. And Rishi Sunak, after 400 days, had about 33,000, whereas Starmer's already hit 50,000 in over 400 days. And we're roughly on par with that year in 2022 when we had 45,000 migrants come across on the boats in the year. That was the highest record. There's a good chance, if the weather is okay over the rest of the year, that Keir Starmer could be seeing over the biggest year on record for boat crossings, and that will be extremely humiliating for him.
100. What is the
And
number,
they've been here-
Can we
they've
get the
been
number
here
for
long
Keir,
enough.
since Keir Starmer's been Prime Minister? What is the next? It's heading towards the 60,000 now. This is over a year, of course, because he's been there since last July. But either way, these headlines are damning. This is the man that was going to smash the gangs.
I know, and how's that one in, one out policy going?
People smuggling guns.
I mean, we've taken about, a family of 3 from France. I think we've sent 4 people over there. Maybe there have been a few more, but we haven't really heard any updates. I'm sure if there were any grand updates, we would have heard about them all at party conference, but they kept that quite quiet, didn't they?
57,324 since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister.
That's embarrassing. And don't you think that the digital ID announcement was kind of rushed out to cover up not just the Morgan McSweeney news, but the fact that the one in, one out policy, it was all across the headlines as a total disaster. I mean, it was absolutely comical how they had in the first week, they had these flights booked every single day with Air France. The first and second days they failed. They booked dozens of seats on all these flights. And the third day they managed to get one guy across who was actually an Indian guy, not someone from one of the countries where we're concerned about women's safety, like Afghanistan.
It's kind of bizarre, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking, how many Indians come across on boats? I do wonder if that Indian is perhaps a guy who had actually come here legally and overstayed his visa.
I think it was like a PhD student who suddenly just realised that, $2,000 to go back. Yeah, I'll take that. I was going home anyway. So, thank you very much indeed. Goodbye. And off he went. So we mentioned, by the way, 100 migrants on a boat yesterday. There were actually 531 in total yesterday.
It's crazy.
So, I mean, extraordinary.
The deterrent is clearly not working.
Indeed. Well, listen, Chloe, we'll let you get back to your left-wing friends. Great to see you again. Thank you very much indeed. Chloe Dobbs with us on the programme. Over to you. Serious question. Who will make the best, or who will be the next Prime Minister of this country? You might think there's a choice of 2. Others might say otherwise. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Birmingham says our next Prime Minister, fingers crossed, will be Nigel Farage, but when Starmer exits number 10, don't rule out a comeback by Angela Rayner, and Starmer should tell his front bench, Streeting, Lammy, Mahmood, stop the vile attacks on Nigel, says Margaret in Birmingham. It's interesting, because one of the things I think a lot of people have got a bit carried away with is that, Keir Starmer will go soon and there'll be an election. Well, I mean, newsflash, even if, and by the way, next year's local elections, which are penciled in to be disastrous for Keir Starmer, could be the moment that Mr Starmer walks the plank. Now, that might happen, might not happen, but let's assume it does. There's still a Labour government, and there will be a new leader if that happens. So, for those who are not super fans of Keir Starmer, it doesn't mean you're going to get a general election, even if he walked. Now, as you saw live on this show yesterday, it happened in real time. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage hit back immediately at the Prime Minister's conference speech when he accused Farage and Reform of racism and division. Battle lines have been well and truly drawn for the next general election. I think this is probably how Mr Starmer kind of wanted it. I think he's relaxed about the idea that there is now clarity. There was always a chasm between the two. There was no similarities. But he's kind of firmly etched that in now. So we've got this interesting situation where battle lines are firmly in the sand. Farage took no time, of course, in sinking Starmer's level, accusing him of inciting violence and being unfit to be Prime Minister. It seems as if the UK is destined for a mudslinging, Trumpian face-off in the coming years. Maybe that'll be a popcorn moment as well. Let's speak to Sebastian Salek first, who is, of course, Labour councillor in Waltham Forest. Sebastian, good to have you with us again. This is your party, your leader. Well, just give us an overview, firstly, what you thought of that speech yesterday.
Good to see you, Ian. Yeah, I just got back from conference and going through the post-conference recovery period. It really takes it out of you. Do you know what? I thought it was pretty good. There was a lot of pressure on him, wasn't there? He really had to get that right. And I think he's won over even his fiercest internal critics, which says a lot. And I think
what did he do that was good, though? Because, I mean, he's an experienced lawyer. Speaking fluently in public is no big hassle. He did that in a very sort of clinical manner. But what did he do that was good, that you go, wow, this guy's amazing? Even as a supporter and a member of and a politician within his party, in that respect, Sebastian, what did he say that you went, oh, my goodness, this guy is amazing? Did you have a my hero moment?
So the big difference is he spoke about values. Usually, if you're a leader making a speech to your party, you talk about policies, you talk about technical details. And this was Starmer putting a line in the sand between him and Farage, which I think a lot of people have been wanting him to do for a long time. We have a really clear idea of where he stands now. Yes, Labour is being tough on immigration, being tough on law and order, which is needed, but there's a big, big difference between what Labour is doing and where Farage is going. Let's not forget he's talking about deporting people who've lived here legally, and that's what he rightly said was racist.
Why is that racist?
Because these are people...
if you've got an iffy visa and you shouldn't be here and you've never gone to work, then you probably shouldn't be here. That's fair, isn't it?
These aren't people who have an iffy visa. These are people who have come over here and lived here legally, sometimes for years and years and years, who've paid into the system and are now, under Reform's policy, going to have that stripped away from them.
I have to, just to be clear, Sebastian, the way I read this, and I think I've read quite a bit about this, was that Reform are not interested in getting rid of people like that. They're interested in people who are the very antitheses of that, who haven't paid into the system, who are not working, but are claiming in some respect. Might be very nice people, it's not a personal thing, but if you've come along on one of those iffy Boris visas and it turns out for the last 5 years you've done nothing, then it's surely incumbent on the government of the day to say, I'm sorry, mate, that's an abuse of the visa we gave you.
But the problem is you're taking them at their word, and the proposal that they're putting in front of us is that they'll be able to do it to anybody, and that is what's really dangerous. It's that level of power.
But they've never said that, though, have they? They've never said. They've said we will review people's visas.
Yeah, but also if you've got...
Not we will throw everybody out that's foreign.
No, I mean, if you've got settled status, if you're here legally at the moment, they are proposing potentially to turn that around. And do you know what? I think that really goes against the values we have in this country. We're the country of fair play. I'm told in cricket quite often, if you think you're going to go out, you're going to walk before the umpire tells you to go. That's a really fantastic thing about our country, and I'm worried about that being eroded.
But if there was, I mean, the suggestion, of course, what they call the Boris wave now, is that so many hundreds of thousands of visas were just kind of given out like confetti, because there was this sense that, you know, we needed people mostly in the care sector and the like. The benchmark financially was something quite low, just over £20,000. So many people found their way in, and then, of course, along came a spouse as well. Fair play to those people. They took up an offer that was out there on the table. But now the next government of the day are going, you know, we've looked at this and we believe that this was fundamentally flawed. It was a financial error, a huge economic disaster, and we're going to re-look at it. That doesn't make you a racist for doing that.
Well, don't get me wrong, I'm not here to defend the Boris wave. I think the Tories got that completely wrong. They got way out of hand. They let in too many people too quickly.
So it needs addressing then? Well, you agree it needs addressing if it's wrong?
No, this goes back to the issue of fair play. You can't then go to people who have claimed indefinite leave to remain and say, sorry, we're now scrapping.
Why can't you do that? I mean, it's not a law of God. I mean, it's just a government decision, and you're saying, actually, we got this wrong. Sorry.
It's a moral point, because these are people who are now building their lives here, working, contributing to societies. There are friends.
But if they're not contributing, that's the point. If they're not contributing, Sebastian, if they're not contributing, and there is no evidence that they've ever contributed, and if you're earning £20,000 a year and you're over in this country, then there's a good chance you might have to be utilising the welfare system. It's that cohort that Reform are saying, you know, we've really got to look at this.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the stats on welfare. The fact that that people are coming over here for a life on benefits is a complete myth. You are as likely to be on benefits if you are an immigrant as you are...
You might not be coming over for that reason, but you might end up in that place.
You may do, but that's what our benefit system is there for. If you're working and you fall on hard times, we owe it to you as a taxpayer to be able to bounce back and get back into your job. That's what people want.
If you are working right now as a minicab driver in certain parts of the country, whether your name is Abdul or whether your name is Adam, both of those people are likely to be on a very low wage and in receipt of quite a lot of welfare in order just to survive. Now, we could argue economically that the mechanics of our economic system, companies should pay more. I get all of that. I understand that. Then you wouldn't look at that person and go, that is value for money. I mean, the whole point of a visa thing is that the country is also gaining from it. That's why you bring people in. If you're not gaining from it, you've got to look at it again. Your contention is, well, anyone who's already here, even if they've only been here for a couple of weeks, has got the right to stay because we promised them that.
Yeah, I think if you've made the promise, it is really foul play to go back on that. But you are completely right that we should be bringing in the best and the brightest to fill the jobs we need to do. You are also right, and I think you alluded to this rather than saying it outright, that we need to make sure that we are not becoming reliant on foreign labour, which we already are. Labour is very clear about that. They want to make sure that industries have a plan to be able to train and hire locally. Otherwise, they're going to cut off their privilege to be able to hire from abroad. That is a system we've been in for too long. And I think it's something also that Starmer touched on yesterday. It was very honest of him to do that, really, because he's calling out governments of all stripes in the past who've got that wrong.
So just finally, Sebastian, so the policy could be wrong, it could be clunky, it might even be unworkable. Doesn't mean it's racist.
Well, it does, though, because he's cut out, he said he's not going to do this if you've got EU settled status. So who does that leave? It's people from developing nations, it's people from...
It still doesn't make it racist.
Pakistan. Of course it does.
Because the EU thing is a separate thing and may include lots and lots of thousands, probably, of non-white people.
But let's call it what it is. This is mass deportations of people from countries a very long way from here. To me, that's really racist. To a lot of people is as well. I was very heartened, as a final point I'll share with you, a poll from YouGov. 46% of people in this country think that reform polls or the reform policies are generally racist.
All right.
That is a majority view, that is a mainstream view rather, and I'm really heartened to see it.
On that point, Sebastian, thank you as ever. Sebastian Salek, who is a Labour councillor over there in Waltham Forest. Let's speak to Dan Barker, board member of Reform UK. Afternoon to you, Dan. On that last point that you just heard from Sebastian, I did try, I hope, reasonably to argue it out with him. However, he said, well, look at the YouGov poll. Most people think it's a racist policy.
Well, I don't think that's right. I think that just plays into the narrative that Labour have peddled throughout this conference, that anyone who has any legitimate concerns about legal or illegal immigration in this country is racist and immoral. And I think, the other thing I'd say about the conference, despite the last guest being so sort of buoyed by it, was it didn't speak to any of the big issues that are really facing the country now. And I think this is Labour's real problem. They didn't talk about the cost of living. There was no ideas on the economy, on the national debt, on the general sense of unfairness that everyone can see and feel in the public space, and of course immigration, and of course law and order. Where were the big ideas? Where was the vision on that?
Yeah, which is fair, and I think, even if you're not a reform supporter, or you're in the middle, or you're undecided, then I think anyone objectively would look at that speech and go, well, there really wasn't a lot in this. Now, he's not the only politician to wheel out a load of vacuous guff at a conference. We know that. They all specialise in this nonsense. But nonetheless, he is the Prime Minister of the day, and he should be called out on it.
He should, and I think, it was despicable the way he attacked Nigel Farage, the rhetoric he used. It was only a couple of weeks ago that Charlie Kirk was assassinated in the US. And, the temperature internationally and in this country has become febrile, I think, in terms of the people get silly ideas, people radical on the far left. And I think it was irresponsible of Keir Starmer and his cabinet to attack Nigel personally in that way. And by extension, he's attacking all the campaigners, all the supporters, and all the people who vote for reform as well.
We were asking the question, I mean, from your perspective, I guess there's only one answer to this. Who will be the next Prime Minister of the UK? Now, you would say Nigel Farage, of course. There is still 4 years to go, or around about there, to another election. I was saying before, Dan, that, even if Starmer totally flunked it in next year's elections, I'm talking Wales, I'm talking Scotland, and of course the local elections as well. Maybe he does walk the plank, but it doesn't mean there's a general election coming, does it? That would just mean the Labour government carry on till 2029 with a different leader.
Well, I think it's a Hobson's choice, isn't it? I mean, I heard you earlier talking about Major Angela Rayner making a comeback. I mean, God help us, if we end up with her as the country's leader. Or you got Wes Streeting, or it's Ed Miliband, or even Andy Burnham, if he can make his way back to Westminster by some by-election. None of those people, I think, have got the answers. I don't think there's anyone in the Labour Party who's got the guts, who's got the gumption to actually step up and make the changes that this country needs. I think we're at, the end of 3 decades of socialism, soft socialism under the Tories, maybe a bit harder under Labour. And, we've got big problems here. And unless we grasp those, I think this country is going to go down even further. Yeah, I think you might be right. Dan, thank you, sir. Always good to have you on. Dan Barker, board member of Reform UK. 2 different voices there. What about yours on this one? 0344 499 1000. David Enfield says Labour have no clue. Reform aren't saying they will kick out indefinite leave to remainers. To remain, they simply say the only criteria was that you had to be in the country for 5 years. Then you are eligible, so long as you pay 2,000 to 3,000 quid and sit a test. I'm Australian. I did it, and at the Home Office, when I did my application test, 90% of those there with me had interpreters. I'm Australian, not EU. US isn't EU either. All Reform are saying is that you have to keep having your case reviewed to safeguard from people taking the mick or abusing the system. That's all. But Labour are banging the only drum they have to bang: racism. There it is. Dave, well put. Dave in Enfield. Over to you in a couple of moments' time. Keep it here. It's the home of common sense. This is Talk.
I think David Lammy must resign immediately, and then I would call upon Merseyside Police to carry out an investigation into the Labour Party that there are a large number of offences, and I don't want to get bogged down in technicalities, that the public broadly know as incitement to violence. And I think we've seen them at the Labour Party conference. I think that's disgraceful. I have friends in the Labour Party. I have friends on the left. I hope that they are utterly shocked and disgraced.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go to your calls. Just gone 10 to 2. This will be Mark in Lincolnshire. How you doing, Mark?
Hi there, Ian, mate. How you doing, Mark?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, far away.
Yeah, what it is, well, a couple of things, really.
Yeah.
Firstly, obviously, the Hitler Youth comment. That was so funny. Yeah, I mean, God, honestly, I mean, what was it? Farage was born in the 60s, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how the hell even bloody that clown came up with that idea? I have no idea. But, you know, beside the point. What I actually really want to talk about, Ian, was this statement that Shabana Mahmood made during the conference about the rise of ethno-nationalism.
Yeah.
Now,
what did you make of that?
I find it quite an interesting conversation, actually. It's something that needs to be had in this country. Because I consider myself an ethno-nationalist, but I also know fine well that I'm not BNP, I'm not some racist. What I am is somebody who, see, I always find it really hilarious from the left, because even the Tories as well, the Tories are guilty of the exact same thing. These are people who have absolutely no problem and will fight tooth and nail and recognise the fact that, for example, the Palestinians deserve their own ethnic state, their homeland, as it were. The Ukrainians, we should fight Russia because Ukraine belongs to the Ukrainians. These are the lines and the rhetoric these people come out with. Yet uniquely in the entire world, when it comes to the English people wanting their homeland for them, no, that's racist. That's bigotry. It's
kind of weird, isn't it? That we need a. I tell you what we need. I was thinking of this earlier. We need almost a new dictionary of words and phrases that are regularly called racist, but actually aren't at all. Because that's the world we've kind of. So if I suddenly shouted on air very passionately, what the heck do I want 50,000 non-English speaking Afghans living in my country? Somebody would hear that and go, God, sounds a bit racist, mate. There's nothing racist about that at all. Nothing at all.
Absolutely.
But we've almost taught ourselves to believe that would be racist. And if it's not, you probably think, you've probably got other views, Collins, that are a bit dodgy. It's that world we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely, Ian. And, for me, like so many, modern ethno-nationalists, we're not talking about a 100% white English country.
I don't know anyone who is. I'm sure there's a few dodgepots out there that think that, but no one I know thinks that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the vast majority of us, and I put myself in this bracket, talk about a 90%, a 90-10 split. Now, funny enough, that's exactly what we had until about 25 years ago, when the ethnic makeup, the ethnic demographics of this country shifted so drastically. And that's really what's prompted all of this at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, within the space of, like, say, about 25, 30 years, we've gone from, I think it was about 92% white English against minorities, obviously, 25, 30 years ago. We've gone from that down to just under 70% now in just 25, 30 years. Now, the thing is, Ian, if you were to do this to any other people in the world, that would be borderline, well, it is literally ethnic replacement at this point.
Well,
anyway.
I make the point regularly. You probably heard it, Mark. That if the left were watching a documentary on BBC4 about a certain tribal or a country group in a small island off South America somewhere who were trying to deal with Westerners turning up and trying to build houses and live there, people would not only be outraged, they'd be starting a crowdfunder for them, and yet when it's sort of the other way round, for some reason it doesn't work for those people. I mean, that's just sort of the definition of madness, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I was looking into this. Somebody said something online. I thought, how true is this? Because I know it's not technically true, but there are elements, and I can see why people get this argument, or why they start going down that path. And that is when people refer to this situation as genocide. Now, the thing is, it isn't genocide. We're not being executed, you know. Now, the issue with that is there's generally an accepted, like, pretty much 10 markers for genocide. And the thing is, with the English situation, we actually fulfill 6 or 7 of those at this point. That's how crazy this is getting. You know, and it's like you were saying there, you know, if we were to suggest this for any other people in any other country, we would literally be colonisers. That's what they would call us. We'd be colonisers.
That's a very good point. And of course, we are, you know, in fairness, we're not the only country that are experiencing this. And America, you know, of course, which is the land of immigrants, it was created by a huge mixture of different people. That doesn't mean to say that that anything goes as you hit the 21st century. So they're trying to deal with it now, and many countries around Europe as well. I've got to move, Mark, for no other reason than I want to get another voice on before the news. Thank you again. Great call. Let's get another voice. Chris in Epsom. What are you thinking, Chris? Good afternoon to you.
Oh, God, my mind's been in a spin this last weekend.
I bet it has.
I haven't called in because most people that have been calling in have covered the topics that I wanted, and they're thinking exactly the same as I do, the same as you put out there. All I want to do is bring your attention to 2 things. One, Lammy definitely said that on purpose, in my opinion.
Yep.
Because don't forget, the young voters that they're going for are not taught about the Second World War, not taught about anything. They don't know. They won't know that Hitler died in 1945. They know nothing about the Second World War.
Yeah.
It's not taught. It's not on the curriculum, right? So there's a man that thinks there's a leader who thinks a man can grow a cervix. It's just total nuts. Now, Starmer, the language he's used, he's taken politics, which was in the gutter, he's taken it down the drain hole.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was possible, but he did. Now, you can say it's conspiracy theory or not, but removing 75% of Nigel's protection guard, all right, a week before he comes up with this blistering attack calling him a racist, I think is designed to put Nigel off.
I don't think anybody's... the government don't pay for Nigel Farage security. No, nothing's been... I don't know where you've heard that, but that's not true, Chris.
It was on your show. It was on the mics this morning. It was Zia Youssef. He went public with it, but the state have removed 75% of Nigel's guard, and a private backer has reinforced it and brought it back up to speed.
Yeah, I'm not aware of the authenticity of that, even if it did come from Zia Youssef, because...
All right.
Anyway, we could argue that one forever, I guess. Listen, now, Chris, the news is upon us. We have to cut it short. We are literally 6 seconds away from the headlines. Here's Chris in Epsom. We'll have more calls from you coming next on Talk.
Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
According to Keir Starmer, if you think young men that illegally cross the English Channel should be detained and deported, you're racist. In fact, if you even criticise any element of the immigration policies of the last 2 governments, you're racist. And yet the Home Secretary, Shabama Mahmood, tries to copy our policies.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British.
Britain is being invaded. Thousands of fighting-age men from countries that despise Britain continue to arrive on our beaches. Our plan is the only appropriate response to a national security emergency. Immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think We should control our borders. You are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists.
We can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline.
To accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed the Afternoon Empire. Good afternoon. Welcome to the home of common sense. As you've been hearing, we are discussing what happened yesterday. Keir Starmer's attack on Nigel Farage during that conference speech. He called him a snake oil salesman and Reform UK as the enemies of national renewal who are promoting racist policies. It's all playground stuff, kids, but it's also fairly toxic and dangerous too. Nigel Farage fired back, accusing Starmer of endangering reform campaigners by fueling the radical left. Also this afternoon, a super dinghy carrying 100 migrants arrived in the UK at the same time Sir Keir Starmer was vowing to tackle the migrant crisis. With over 33,000 crossings this year, smugglers are now using larger boats imported from China to maximise profits. And Keir Starmer has hinted at tax hikes to fill the UK's 50 billion quid financial black hole, but promises no rise from income tax, VAT or national insurance. Economists warn spending cuts or increases in inheritance and capital gains tax are inevitable. Britain needs growth, not more taxes. It's that simple. More on that coming in 0344 499 1000. Just to pick up on Chris's story, there is a story, and forgive me for correcting Chris. There is a minor correction on that Nigel Farage has had 75% of his security detail removed. Apparently 75%, according to one source here, is one person. Most of his security is supplied privately anyway. That is the answer to it. So not 75% of his entire security is my point. But either way, it will be interesting to find the reasons why the Parliamentary Security Department, they're responsible for security, and they work with the police and they work with others to see on a case-by-case basis which politicians and members of Parliament require security. Be interesting to see what the specific reason was for reducing something in that area. Happy to clarify that. Lots more to get through. Phil says, bring back Gordon Brown. You serious, mate? I had to take a swig of water when you said that. I was so shocked. Ian in Glasgow says, I found it interesting that Keir Starmer made no mention of digital ID in his conference speech. Do you think this has been quietly ditched? No, it's definitely not, but it's an interesting question, though, Ian. It's interesting he didn't. It's definitely not been quietly ditched. They are as wedded to this as it's possible to wed yourself to flipping anything, it seems. And there's a lot to be said, of course, about digital ID, because within days of the warnings about it and its pervasiveness into every aspect of private life, were all founded at a fringe event at the conference. The Home Secretary seemingly couldn't wait to explain how it could be used beyond the right to work, which, of course, is how it was sold to us last week. It's all about the right to work. It's going to stop people on boats coming over. Really? I mean, even when they had the meeting at Labour HQ and said, I know what we'll do, we'll set it on a kind of immigration thing. Didn't anyone in the room go, well, that's a bit rubbish because it doesn't work? It couldn't possibly be the case. It's already illegal to do what you're doing. Do you think the people on boats and the people that are facilitating that give a hoot about digital ID? You think all the people working currently in the black economy in this country will suddenly go, oh my God, we better stop doing it because there's a thing. It's cobblers, OK? Now, the suggestion at this fringe meeting was that whether it's renting, bills, accessing the NHS or fraud, there is seemingly nowhere that digital ID cards won't be required. We kind of knew this stuff. Let's speak with Alan Miller, friend of the show, of course, and Alan's from the Together Declaration. I know you're doing a bit of good old-fashioned agitating in Liverpool, Alan. Good to see it. How did you get on, firstly, at the conference, and did they let you in?
It was fantastic at the conference, Ian, because we had a combined farmers rally saying abolish IHT for all. Farmers to Action have done a 1 month long series of trailers across the UK. And we also had a challenge saying no to digital ID. Let's just say it went fantastically, Ian, because what's happened is that people from left, centre and right are all united on this issue. Delegates, members of the Labour Party were taking flyers, talking to us. They're in shock. Hugely unpopular, and we've just seen today that the idea of digital ID has gone to minus 14% in the latest poll, more in common. So we've seen that this attempt to impose this draconian measure without any discussion, as Yvette Cooper said, it was not in any manifesto of ours. We're not doing it. And just like with the farmers, they completely double back and then go and try and impose it on us. But the thing is, Keir Starmer did talk about it in his speech, because what he said was the new NHS digital system. And now the attempt, knowing that it isn't working on the idea that it's going to stop the boats and solve the migration issue, because Italy, Germany and France all have national ID cards and they have lots of issues with boats and illegal migrants. Knowing that it doesn't work, they've got a new tack, which is to say it's really going to help with GP meetings. It's going to help with health provision. And he doesn't ever explain how that is. We know that many people did get on the NHS app because they're desperate for a GP appointment. We need to solve the problem of health provision, resources, what we do with the NHS and private care, and have that debate and have that commitment in policy, not try and hoist upon us a biometric surveillance state. And this is the real point, Ian. It's why over 2.6 million people have signed this petition against digital ID. It's why people are so furious about it. We don't want Britain to be we're all potential criminals. We're told now, Shabana Mahmood, there's all these different things she's going to do. We're now being told facial recognition is going to be everywhere. It's mandatory to work and to get pensions and to rent, and for children and nurseries, we're being told. In fact, maybe even for going into the supermarket. And if you don't say the right thing or think the right thing, perhaps you'll get shut off, a bit like a social credit system. The idea that they want to track and trace every aspect of our lives is so contrary to what it means to be in Britain. And the time is now, Ian, and we're asking everyone, all your viewers and listeners, to come to togetherdeclaration.org, join our hundreds of thousands of supporters and signatories who've been fighting this. We saw it off under the digital ID, vaccine passports. We've won lots of things. We saw off with 100,000 frontline staff against the mandatory jabs. Across the board, we keep winning things with cash and the FCA about debanking. We've worked with many other people to get these things in place. But this is the big fight, Ian. No to digital ID. We're going to ask everyone, togetherdeclaration.org, because we're getting MPs being told, we've got May elections, we want the Cabinet to understand this up and down the country. And honestly, Ian, it's been remarkable in Merseyside, in the Wirral, in Birkenhead, in Liverpool. We've been projecting projectors with no to digital ID on the Liver building, on Lime Street Station, on the Albert Dock, and Everton football fans and councillors and everyone stopping, taking photos and agreeing. We've never seen anything like this. And that's why it's time now for everyone to stand together and say no to digital ID.
It's interesting, by a piece of either handy timing in terms of your arguments on this one, Alan, or some rather disturbing timing. I was also reading today that the use of cash is declining and 57% of adults are registered to use mobile wallets at the same time. What do we make of that? Because I know this is another area you feel strongly about, the cash thing disappearing.
Yeah, so cash is really essential for society. It's not just older people who want and need cash. But it is true, and this is particularly true of the lockdowns and the attempt to foist upon us doing things in a very particular way, always with barcodes and remotely, and that's where a big shift happened. We're all for convenience, we're all for technology, but we must be in a situation where we can't just be tracked and surveyed for all our actions. You know, we know the Bank of International Settlements, the CEO said he wants to track and survey every single transaction of ours. And we know that the European Union is imposing this. But we also know, Ian, that hundreds of millions of breaches happen every day. There's 125 million Americans just in 2025 who've had their data breached, their privacy invaded. We've seen it across Europe. We've seen it with Ardar in India. We've also seen in Vietnam 86 million bank accounts closed down with a mandatory biometric ID system. The idea that this country, where we've seen lockdowns and censorship and spies sent on us and two-tier policing and an attack on free speech, where police seem to not be able to deal with burglaries and crime, but they do want to come to your house six-handed for a social media post or arrest a comedian at the airport with arms. The idea that we can allow the state to impose these things on us is really a problem. And the question of how people choose to do transactions, I mean, obviously there's loads of ways that people can do it, but we need to make sure we retain cash. And we've been insistent on that. As it happens, the Bank of England, when we were campaigning, agreed to keep local bank branches open and to keep cash in the system and ATM machines, all of which are essential in a mix for us all.
And just a final one on the back of some very powerful stuff you've said there, Alan, and it's always great to get you on to hear these views crystal clear and for you to articulate on behalf of, as you rightly said at the beginning, this goes across parties. There's loads of lefties, there's loads of righties, and there's loads of people in the middle that are apoplectic about all of this. And I guess when you see stories like this next one here, that Northern Trains are trialling a GPS-based system tracking passengers' phones to calculate pay-as-you-go. Like all of these things, you know, these things are often sold on convenience, right? And that's the way you're kind of hoovered in, because you go, well, this thing's like a great idea, you know, my life's going to be a lot easier. I've got everything in my phone here. I haven't got to worry about searching through the filing cabinet for the driving licence. And this is another example of what they're doing with the trains.
Well, indeed, Ian, I've just come back on a train and it took 5 hours and there were delays and we couldn't get on one platform or on another. And this idea that this kind of technocratic solution with a phone somehow is going to solve all these problems, infrastructure problems need to be dealt with infrastructure investment and making it efficient and getting rid of all the excess slack. In the same way that we need to look at that with housing and education and health, that takes robust policy. It takes ideas and clarity, and not attempting to foist on us a dystopian barcode, we're all potential criminals, and tracking and surveying us at every point. Look, if you've got some health records just with your doctor that's online digitally with you, that's one thing. The idea of a central system that's overseen by the state with technocrats who've gone along with censoring, shutting things down, weaponizing free speech, putting all sorts of banning orders on protests and worse. The idea that we're going to go along with that is for the birds. You know, togetherdeclaration.org, we're going to keep fighting and challenging it. This is the hill that so many in Britain say they'll die on. Winston Churchill said it right in 1952. He said he's getting rid of the national ID card to set Britain free. We think we take freedom very seriously, and our rights and our privacy, and we invite all your listeners and viewers to stand with us together. And
it's very easy to Google and look up the Together Declaration. Alan is the co-founder. Thank you as ever, Alan. Great to have you on with us. I know we're going to speak again probably very soon, because this subject never goes away. And just to clarify with the train idea, which again all sounds like logical stuff, and it depends on the kind of world you want to live in. So everything that is disturbing, this is how the argument goes. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that rolled out the phrase about, you know, the convenience of this thing, and others did as well. Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, if you've ever read that, it's kind of, I think that's a notch up, by the way, from 1984 in terms of the kind of sinister message. Even he proclaimed, after he'd written it, yonks back, but years later, he was disturbed by how much of this stuff had started to happen. But so the barcode idea on the train is that you have your barcode and you zip in and out here, there and everywhere. And you know what it's like to try and buy the cheapest ticket. It's nuts out there. You can't, you think, well, is that the cheapest one? And then you get the cheapest one and you get on the train and the ticket inspector goes, you're not allowed to travel on that ticket. You can only travel on that one between 24 minutes past 9 and 26 minutes past 9. And if you're outside of that window, I'm afraid we're going to fine you £150. And you think, well, how would I have known that? So the idea of this is that to address that, so when you get to the other end, the computer says yes, and it adds up all your little barcode zaps and taps and says, right, OK, that's the journey you made. This is then the cheapest price. So that sounds really convenient. Of course, detractors, and Alan is among them, would say, well, OK, that's a lot of tracking going on just to give me the cheapest price. I'd quite like to have got it at the machine before I set out for the day. Back to your calls. This is Matthew in Cheshire. Matthew, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
I am just suing for you, mate. Right. Super dinghy. It's a bloody P&O ferry. It's got 150 people on it.
Yes, I was going to say, I've done cross-channel trips with P&O that have had fewer people on board.
What are we paying the French for? It's all like,
oh, come on, they're great. They've done a great job. The gendarme once popped a dinghy. I mean, he got no recognition for this.
We're paying them thousands to just, like, come on.
Millions.
Actually, really... Yeah, millions, right. We started off with a little 6-man dinghy, and now they've got bloody ferries.
Yeah.
Surely.
It will not be long before it literally is a boat, a kind of cruise liner job.
And we're meeting it in the middle and say, lads, come on, jump on it, let them turn around and bring another 150 back. It's scandalous.
Even Uber couldn't come up with a system as efficient as this.
You might as well get one of them Uber boats you got on the Thames outside the House of Lords and use one of them.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the Uber guys are thinking about it.
Instead of these politicians calling Nigel Farage a Nazi, which he just pulled out the sky, just do what the people are saying. Stop it.
They can't seem to. That's the bit that our politicians, our conventional politicians, Tory and Labour, can't get their head around it. Can't do it. I mean, we're going to hear probably this weekend that Kemi Badenoch is going to pull out of the ECHR. That would be seen as progress. I mean, you can't carry on with this charade.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's it. Go on. You carry on, Matthew.
If I had a cancer and the NHS can't afford to pay for it, they're not going to just fight. They'll let me die because they do say that we're out of money. We've got no money. We can't afford. You've got Keir Starmer just standing there. You know, he come out with the one thing I picked up when you say our youth will 50% of our children will go to university. Yeah, will be ridden with debt. Who's paying for that?
Yeah.
You know,
every single time it comes down to who's paying for it, and we need to we've got to recalibrate how this country does business, how it functions, how it works, what we expect. And this idea, and it's the greatest mistake of the left, who always believe governments can do much more than they actually can. We've got to rid ourselves of that idea and almost start again. Matthew, I've got to rush for no other reason than more voices are coming on. Matthew, thank you for that. Matthew in Cheshire. John in London says, digital ID really scares me. If it's combined with a cashless society, it gives the government far too much power of observation on the individual, which is a completely fair point. Nobody could argue about that. Some people are perfectly relaxed about it. Some are absolutely fine. They work on the basis of I'm doing nothing wrong, what does it matter? Which is a wholly anti-intellectual, specious and frankly stupid argument. 0344 499 1000. More from you coming up. This is Talk.
They've only got really 3 years to wait out until there's somebody else in the White House. And if it's a Democrat, they're in a great place because 8% support for Israel among Democrats at the moment, 6% if you drop to the youth age groups. And there's every chance that they could then leverage that at the UN Security Council and so on and so forth. So if I'm Hamas right now, I'm handing in my weapons, I'm claiming that I'm standing down. I'll send a few people to take one for the team and emigrate. And then I'm just going to wait, bide my time, reload, and then try and seize control of Gaza.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Neil says the only thing that will save Keir Starmer is calling a referendum, a vote around the ECHR ban UK justice system. Thank you for that, Neil. Steve says any news from the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, regarding the sentencing today of the Rochdale Asian grooming gang? She's quick enough making speeches about white people. To be fair, a Home Secretary wouldn't ordinarily respond specifically to any kind of case, but it will, I'm sure, come up in an interview, and if it doesn't, I hear what you're saying, Steve. P.S. I don't need an ID card. I've still got my Hitler Youth accreditation from late 1967. Brilliant. This one from David. Del Boy will be the next Prime Minister. He's already giving Reeves her economic ideas. No income tax, no VAT, no money back, and definitely no guarantee, says David. Digitally in the Cotswolds and can make my own ID, thank you. Love it. Greg's in Edinburgh. Greg, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's just, if there was any further proof that how illogical, if not stupid, our dear Prime Minister is, how can you claim that someone who isn't a racist will introduce racist policies?
Yes, that's a very good point. Because that would be a bit weird, wouldn't it? That if you were not a racist, you wouldn't introduce racist policies. Why would you want to? You'd leave that to the racist.
Yeah, well, precisely. It's like, as I said to your producer there, I said it's like a South African who in the day said, I agree with apartheid, but I'm not a racist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly that, right? Because you wouldn't enact the politics. Yeah. I mean, they know this, but of course they're playing the game of division. And it's completely discombobulated the left, Greg, hasn't it? Because they don't really know where to go. And their only attack line is to go down the line of you're a racist because you have policies that are different to the ones that the, quote, establishment have had in place for years. And you're coming along and tinkering with it. How dare you? What shall we call them? We can call them inept. We can say your policies are unworkable. We can do all of that. No, we'll just go for the racist card.
Well, yeah, but the saddest thing of all, that it makes something that's really serious and quite awful just meaningless.
Correct.
I mean, it's just a word you throw around and everyone just shrugs and says, well,
100%.
We're all racists now. Who really cares?
We shouldn't, it's happened quite a lot over the years, hasn't it, where the word racist has been sort of just reduced to it should be almost a protected word to correctly identify the worst kind of person whose views are abhorrent and not in keeping with our beliefs and standards and ideas and all of that stuff. It should be reserved for that, not just thrown away willy-nilly at a Liverpool Labour Party conference.
Well, remember the days when if you saw something on the TV and someone used the F word or even now the C word, and I mean, in days gone by, it would have been an absolute public outcry. Now we just shrug and say, it's all just part of daily life. And it's the standards that just drift, and it makes, society just that wee bit more crummy, really.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Love it. Great call. Thank you, Greg, for that. Really appreciate that. We have a problem with our switchboard, by the way. We are trying to rectify it. So if you're calling in now, you might be able to call in. I don't even know if you get a ringtone, but we can't answer you. We're unable to answer the calls, not because Damien, who's answering the calls at the moment, is bone idle. Perish the thought. We just technologically are unable to answer. You know when you press close on a tab on a computer and it just won't close, or you press any other feature on a website, you know, like Pay Now or whatever, and it won't do it. No, you go, hang on, I'm pressing it. You decide I'll just press the mouse harder. It's a little bit like wiggling the batteries in the back of your remote control because you think it might give you an extra 30 seconds of life just so you can switch over to Corrie. We're in that ballpark. We just can't answer calls. So that's going to be interesting because I'm still almost losing my voice. Not quite, but almost. And we will do our best. We have, however, you can contact us 87222 if you're messaging. Steve says, bit of breaking news. It's come out that Nigel Farage was in secret talks with Mussolini. Yeah, it's not talked about often. I'm glad that Steve's reminded us that that happened. And no one ever talks about it. I think if you dig deep enough, and I'm grateful for Steve to raising this very important point, which is frankly a breach of national security as well, you will probably find photographic evidence of the two of them taking tea in Margate. Yeah, it's definitely there. You might find a few other wrong-uns as well that Nigel has been hanging around with. You know what he's like. I think after he sought solace with his meetings with Queen Victoria, anything went after that, to be frank. Neil says, get your flags ready. Thank you for that, Neil. This one comes from Debbie, who says, why don't the government just buy all the dinghies from the suppliers? Not conventional, but surely cheaper than housing. Yeah, you might think that would... You could give it a go. I wonder if somebody seriously has thought about that in the Home Office. Maybe we just buy all the dinghies in the world. Really? Nobody can buy a dinghy? I have little kids going, I used to buy a dinghy for the summer holidays to float down the river. Can't buy them. The government bought them all. That might be the better option. 0344 499 1000. We're going to chat to Ryan Sabey in just a couple of moments. 2:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
On 2:30, right here on Talk. This comes from Jill in Berkshire, who says, what I'd like to know is if facial recognition comes in with this digital ID, are people in burqas exempt? And I say people because you don't know who's wearing them, men or women. Why should they be exempt if that is the case? I also think that Starmer and Lammy and the rest of the useless, spiteful Labour government should knock at the door, should get a knock at the door for inciting racial and dangerous rhetoric to Nigel Farage and Reform. What if they'd written that stuff on social media rather than said it at a conference? Then I suppose it is vaguely possible. You might have got a knock at the door. At number 10 Downing Street, 6 coppers turn up, a police dog, and God knows who else. We'll come back to all of those stories. I want to talk about this, though. They're going for growth, or at least that's what they tell us. Still as much as Starmer could muster, it seemed to be business as usual. Tax and spend, the mantra of this government since day one, has up till this point not really worked. Give us time, they said. But has your patience already snapped? Let's get a word with Ryan Saby, economics editor at The Sun. Afternoon to you, Ryan. And, Starmer kind of laid it out that, we'll get things back on track, but it's going to come at a price, to paraphrase him.
Yeah, no, he was pretty clear in that conference speech when it came to business that there are going to be really, really tough decisions, difficult decisions ahead. And as soon as you hear a politician, certainly of whether it's Prime Minister or Chancellor level, talk about hard decisions, difficult decisions, that means only one thing. That means taxes are going up. So what they're doing now and what you're going to be seeing over the next few weeks is the government, possibly the Chancellor, just paving the way for really, really tough choices and the fact that taxes are going to go up. So I think everyone should kind of brace themselves that the government has got to raise somewhere probably in the region of 20 to 30 billion pound. That is just to stand still. So the Chancellor, the Treasury, ministers all across government are going to be trying to find ways to either save money or try and find ways to actually tax people. Now, the trouble is, this Labour government, when they came into power, they said they were not going to raise national insurance, VAT or income tax. That is they are the main revenue raisers. Yeah. So what they're going to do now is they're going to have to look across the board to try and find some money from somewhere. I think they're going to be, whether it'll be capital gains tax, inheritance tax, could there be some changes to maybe VAT rules without actually explicitly breaking those manifesto commitments? They're the kind of places the Chancellor will be looking in the coming weeks.
It's going to be a lot of wordplay here, isn't it? Because they're kind of steadfast on this tax, national insurance and VAT thing. I mean, some would argue they've kind of broken the national insurance thing already. However, in order to sort of circumnavigate that promise, they've got to somehow find an imaginative, shall we say, way of doing it. So whether that's specific VAT on certain areas is one suggestion we keep hearing about, Ryan.
Yeah, that's right. So what I think you may well see is VAT maybe going up in certain areas, because what you've got is VAT, the standard rate is 20%. You've got other levels at 5%. So there may be some sort of tinkering around that. But don't forget, half of all household items are subject to VAT. So once you start adding VAT to some of those costs, things are just going to get really, really expensive, but particularly at a time where you've got food inflation probably going to hit late 5, nearly 6% come the end of the year. I think one thing that we may well see, and this is an easy revenue raiser for the Chancellor, is the income tax thresholds to be extended. So what she may well do is say the threshold will be extended for another 2 years, and that will raise about £10 billion. So you get a situation where the threshold stays the same and more people are dragged into it. And she can actually say, well, income tax hasn't gone up because I haven't raised that rate, more people have just been dragged into it. This is what the Conservative government did as well.
Yeah, true. But you end up in that curious place, right, don't you, where some people get a pay rise, which turns out to be a pay cut.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really difficult thing for employers and employees, and people who may want to move jobs may not do so because they're gonna lose out. And I think I picked up on an interesting phrase over the last couple of weeks, the phrase of job hugging, where people don't want to particularly move on. They want to stay with the security of the job they've got because they just find it could be too risky to move on, which is a terrible state of affairs for the economy, especially when someone like Rachel Reeves is really looking to find some growth from somewhere, to try and get productivity from somewhere, because the numbers for UK economic growth are pretty dismal, and that's why she's got her back up against the wall, because she's every which way she turns, she is hamstrung. So this is why this Friday, for example, the independent watchdog will give their first report to the Chancellor, and it looks like that she may well have to find 20 or 30 billion pounds, and that's going to be the first sort of real indication of where she's going with this. So it's going to be tough for the Chancellor. It's going to be tough for all across the government, but some might say they haven't helped themselves. Look what they did last year with the national insurance rise.
Indeed, but every time I see a minister wheeled out into a radio or a TV studio, Ryan, they leap to tell us that we're the fastest growing economy in the G7. Now, the bar is pretty darn low on that one, but how much longer can they use that as a selling point of their economic brilliance?
Yeah, I think this is the real difficult thing for all ministers or all politicians of all stripes. It's all very well and good saying, oh, we're the fastest growing economy in the G7, the G20. Look at us. I think the real measure is how people feel in their pocket. Do they feel better at the end of the week or the end of the month? Do they have any spare money? Rachel Reeves has used this phrase before. She talks about fun money. Do people have enough money at the end of the week to go to the pub, take their family out to a restaurant? If people aren't feeling better off, this is where this government is going to come a cropper if they haven't already. And as we get closer to Christmas, and as I mentioned before, that food inflation getting to 6%, she also may well raise taxes on everyone as well. People are going to feel a lot poorer. So their main mission of number one growth, trying to raise living standards, it's really, really difficult to sort of reach those targets that they set themselves.
It's going to be interesting. I was about to say as we approach a general election, but we're not approaching it. It just feels like it all the time at the moment because we've got parties who are electioneering, quite literally. And we'll come on to the Farage-Starmer battle in just a second. But just a word on Reform themselves. I mean, they are gradually releasing more areas of policy and the like, but they are going to need to have, and I don't think this is going to change in the next 3 or 4 years, a really substantial, credible economic plan.
Yeah, and I think at the moment we've seen quite a bit of policy from them when it comes to immigration. There've been a few things on the economy, but I think they're going to have to come up with a fully costed program, and I think that is just going to have to hold up to scrutiny, because I think it's all very well and good being 3-4 years out from a general election talking about big ideas, but how is that actually going to translate to people feeling better? Yeah. Are they going to reduce taxes, or what is their main offer to the public? Now, there's some tough decisions to make, and Rachel Reeves has got to make some big decisions on welfare. What do the Reform Party do on welfare? The Conservatives, when they're in offer, try to reduce it by £12 billion. How far would Reform go? Do the sums add up? So let's just wait to see what Richard Tice and Nigel Farage come up with there.
I wonder if Reform have done this with a couple of areas of nationalisation in some sectors. They've talked about that. Could it really be, Ryan, that Nigel Farage and Reform come up with a wealth tax?
But I think what you're going to see is, I don't think they'll come up with a wealth tax per se. But I think just as Rachel Reeves will be looking at taxes across the board, I think what you'll find is they won't be labelled like that. No. But things like inheritance tax, capital gains tax, maybe stamp duty, that these things will be altered, and it will hurt people's wealth per se. So you're not going to see something explicit, but I think once you add all those little pots of money up, it may well feel like a wealth tax to many people.
Yeah, I mean, Thatcher did it with the banks, of course, and her argument was a very pure one. She said, look, there's certain times when the interest rate does something and the banks make a ton of money. They haven't done anything to make that money. They haven't, somehow employed some brilliant fiscal brains to say, oh, look, they've just made more money by dint of what happened to the interest rate. So therefore, that's a reasonable area, not in perpetuity, but for the moment to tax them. So, some might say, well, if Thatcher can do it, maybe Nigel Farage can.
Exactly. And I know that the banks are concerned at this. What rate, this a banking levy would go to.
Yeah.
And don't forget, it was the Conservative government, of course, who brought in that windfall tax on the oil and gas companies. You may just see a temporary measure just to boost revenue one way or another.
And just finally, Ryan, what do you make of this battle? I know you've written about this between Farage and Starmer. I mean, there's so many curiosities about this, not least, isn't it interesting that the government are arguing against a party that has 5 MPs rather than the official opposition, the Conservatives? I mean, talk about changing times, and it's never going to change back, I don't think.
Yeah, no, it seems that the government, Labour Party have seen the polling. They look at the numbers and they see that obviously Reform are on around 30%. Sometimes the government is down to 20%. So they think that it's better to go after, towards the right and try and haul some of that support back to them. But I think one thing that Sir Keir Starmer has got to be wary of is votes being lost to the left, to the Greens and independents, to the Liberal Democrats. So what he doesn't really want to be done is sort of stuck in the middle and just trying to please everyone all of the time. It sometimes means that you please none of the time because you're just what is your big story, your big vision to tell. So for his sake, as I say, he doesn't want to be caught in the middle. But I do think the interesting we've had a lot about the racism row on this and Keir sort of sticking to his guns. I think the interesting thing will be. We talk about those local elections, how important they are. If Reform do really, really well, it's going to be, and it could be a complete rejection of the sort of thesis that Sir Keir Starmer is putting up this week and those attacks. Where does that then leave the Prime Minister? Now, he seems to have shored up his position for now. I was up at the Labour Party conference over the last couple of days, did very, very well in the hall with those delegates, with the party faithful. But how is it playing out in the country? We'll just have to wait and see. But at the moment, he's fine for now.
Yeah, fine for now. And that's how we leave it hanging. Ryan, always great to have you on. Thank you very much, Ryan Saby, economics editor at The Sun. Thank you to him. These are really curious times, even allowing for the fact, and I know I say this quite a bit, that we, the whole 24-hour media thing has been with us for a long while now, but the social media aspect is, relatively speaking, more recent. And the way we analyse and the way we debate and discuss. So those that digest news and enjoy it and take it seriously and look down some of those rabbit holes, and sometimes we add 2 and 2 together and make 5. We all do that as humans. I get it. But the overarching interest in what's happening with politics has never been so peaked as it is right now. And that's great. That's great in so many respects. But this situation with Reform and Labour is just utterly fascinating. I can remember sitting here in this studio July the 3rd last year, and then back on air July the 4th last year. Now let me replay that again. July the 4th was the day of the election. We're not allowed to talk about elections on the day of the elections. Curious kind of Ofcom thing. I don't like you talking about it in case you influence the minds of the vulnerable. So you can't even mention it, really. You can have it in the news, but you can't talk about it. A presenter can't even say there's an election today. What kind of mad, mucked up world is that? But that's the law of the land. So on July the 3rd, the day before the election, which was the last day we could talk about it, we had so many people speculating how well Reform would do in terms of MPs. And the highest projection was some people thought they might get, I think some people had penciled in maybe 7, possibly 7 seats. Quite common for a lot of commentators to say no seats at all. They'll make some noise, but they ain't going to get an MP. Never done it before. Brexit Party didn't do it. UKIP didn't do it. I'm afraid Reform are not going to do it either. That was a common held view. You know, they'll give everyone a good kicking in the right areas, in the right constituencies, but they're not going to get an MP. And then they came back with six, I think, it was 6 or 7 to start with, 6 maybe. Unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. And that's one thing. Like the Green Party have 3 or 4, whatever it is. But nobody really expected the influence of reform to be so profound and so quick. And it's gone so quickly that they are now almost the official opposition. I don't know what Kemi Badenoch's going to pull out the bag. We asked the question, who will be the next Prime Minister? Could it still be Kemi Badenoch? By the way, I've just been reliably informed a team of engineers have just swarmed into this studio, and boy, did they come en masse. It was biblical, I'm telling you. Down they came, well, Lloyd came, okay. They came with a big bag of spanners. They've been into the phone system. We are told the phone system is now fixed. So if you'd previously been trying to get on and nobody answered your call and you're thinking, they don't love me at Talk Towers, this is not true. It's an urban myth. We couldn't actually answer the call, physically could not answer or pick up a call. It is back. We're back on the road. 0344 499 1000. If you want to speak about any of the issues, or if you tried to get through before when it was all hunky-dory but couldn't get an answer, then we can get you on now. They're back, they're fixed, they're sorted. 0344 499 1000. Everything we've talked about there, and that salient question, who will be the next Prime Minister of this country? At the moment, it seems a two-horse race. It's either going to be Starmer or it's going to be Nigel Farage. Is it really possible that Kemi Badenoch could come up with the goods? They've got their conference starting this weekend. There'll be a big keynote speech. Watch for that moment when she says we will leave the ECHR. That will definitely be in there. But we now know this whole game of politics in the 21st century is about much more than a few announcements. This has got to come from the gut. You've got to sound like you believe it. You've got to sound likeable, credible and doable. And if you don't tick those boxes, doesn't matter what you announce, frankly, Kemi, it won't happen. We will see. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They are the most successful party in time ever. In history, I think is the word I was looking for. Can they rekindle? Can there be almost an epiphany moment for the Tories when they realise what they've got to do and they say it? 0344 499 1000.
suppose the danger maybe is I have built up a community over the last year or two who I think feel that I am genuine and that I speak my true thoughts. I am not giving lines. You ask me a question, I will answer it as fairly and as truthfully as I can. And maybe that is a threat to, I don't know, a lack of authenticity. I don't know is the truth. I've just found it. I'm not angry. It's upset me. It's hurtful. And I think, I've slugged my guts out for this party and continue to try and do so in many ways. And this is the thanks you get.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Coming up on 5 to 3. Let's just, before we go back to the calls, don't go away, Robert, don't go away, John. The voice of doom, this is day 12. It's the mystery voice bit, but it's a politician you are looking for. Past or present, could be, recently, could be decades ago. Here's the voice.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
No one's got it so far. Who do you think this is?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. Who is this?
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Don't phone in, just message 87222 if you fancy having a go. And if we get a right answer, we'll tell you after the news. Here it is one more time.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
If you think you know who that is. Let's go to Robert down in London. Robert, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hi, Ian.
Hi.
I hope you're well.
You're all good, thanks.
As you may remember, we have spoken a few times over the years.
I think the very first time was when you told me about the UKIP leaflets debacle.
Yeah, I was assaulted in the street for handing out leaflets it was in Brixton, and of course, as someone who is half Caribbean and not going with a narrative, it's pretty nasty down there.
Yeah, that must have really upset a lot of people, the fact, hang on, here's a non-white bloke giving out UKIP leaflets. What's happened?
Dear.
What happened to the brotherhood there, Robert?
I don't know, but I'm assured that they are the caring, sensitive.
Of course they are. Yeah, it's all for a smack in the chops. Is when it's for the right reasons is okay, apparently.
Yes. Well, it hasn't stopped, by the way, since then, since 2016. The madness followed me. At my kid's primary school in East Dulwich. He was ostracised from playgroups because his father had voted for leave, which I thought was a bit harsh on a primary school kid. Yeah, there was loads of very strange incidents over the years.
That's bizarre.
But really, all in when you reduced it, it was hate. It was just pure hate.
Of course it is.
The reason I called is look, I carried on a little bit. I don't want to be in politics. I never have. And I was so glad. I followed Farage into the Brexit party, and they were desperate for potential parliamentary candidates. So I stood, and I was so glad when he stood us down. Right, and now I just give a bit of money to Reform as a member, but not involved in the branches or anything like that.
Yeah.
However, after yesterday's disgraceful scenes, like the way they were clapping and cheering, and they couldn't hear what he was saying, it sounded like some weird rally.
Do you know what? Because that happened, didn't it, with Rachel Reeves earlier in the week? And this is obviously choreographed, wasn't it? At some point, somebody in the audience obviously gave not the finger in that respect, maybe they should have done, but somebody gave the signal, that's the word, gave the signal, and everybody started not just clapping, but then cheering, and it sounded like a really sinister rally that you might have found in another country, in the last century, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. So I looked at this, and then I look at the fact that Nigel's being attacked and calling racist and all the rest of it. And you'd think after 10 years of calling people racist, they would have learned a lesson, but they clearly haven't. But what happened yesterday was a bit more sinister. in my book. That really was borderline incitement to violence. So I've called in to say that I'm not hanging. What's the opposite of hanging up your boxing gloves? I'm putting them back on. Right. I am going to find because there are people out here. I'm going to help establish a local branch for reform. Right. And I'm not. I can't put my name anywhere because I've experienced what it's like.
Sure.
You have to put your name on public registers and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant. But there are younger people who are willing to take up that challenge, and I'll lend them the experience of. I know how a board works and how to structure it and all the rest of it. And that's what I'm going to do.
Well, good. I mean, good for you. This is a democracy, and the Reform UK Brixton branch is frankly waiting to happen. Listen, Robert, look, we've been speaking for nearly a decade. It's great to have you on. Thank you, Robert in London, who's giving it a go. That's what it's all about, really, isn't it? Mobilising whatever your opinion is, left, right, somewhere in the middle. If you feel passionately, do something about it. Otherwise, it all goes stale and people forget, this is a democracy and we are meant to be a little bit active and interested in our lives. Easy to forget. Voice of Doom is coming after the news at 3 o'clock, but have we got a correct answer? Find out.
Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think it is a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
According to Keir Starmer, if you think young men that illegally cross the English Channel should be detained and deported, you're racist. In fact, if you even criticise any element of the immigration policies of the last two governments, you're racist. And yet the Home Secretary, Shubham Mahmood, tries to copy our policies.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British.
Britain is being invaded. Thousands of fighting-age men from countries that despise Britain continue to arrive on our beaches. Our plan is the only appropriate response to a national security emergency. Immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication, Reform supporters, Reform voters, Reform sympathisers are racist too. Yes, if you think we should control our borders, you are, by the definition of the Prime Minister and his cabinet, all racists.
We can all see that the country faces a choice, a defining choice. Britain stands at a fork in the road. We can choose decency, or we can choose division, renewal or decline.
To accuse countless millions of being racist is a very, very low blow. Why? Well, this language will incite and encourage the radical left. I'm thinking of Antifa and other organisations like that. It directly threatens the safety of our elected officials and our campaigners. And frankly, in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, I think this is an absolute disgrace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of Common Sense. We are, of course, responding. Well, you heard it live on this programme yesterday. The Keir Starmer, Nigel Farage Well, it's a bit more than a spat. Actually, it became a little bit sinister, with the Prime Minister referring to Nigel Farage as a snake oil merchant and Reform UK as enemies of national renewal who are promoting, his words, racist policies. Farage, of course, fired back, accusing Starmer of endangering Reform campaigners by fueling the radical left. And he's actually done that. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Whatever you think of Farage or Starmer, the Prime Minister has gone there. He's gone into that territory and he's firing up nutters who are likely to do silly things to people who have the audacity to have a different opinion. Meanwhile, a super dinghy carrying 100 migrants arrived in the UK at exactly the same time that that Keir Starmer was giving his speech vowing to tackle the migrant crisis. In fact, there were over 500 people yesterday, but 100 of them came on one big boat. With over 33,000 crossings this year and almost 60,000 almost under Keir Starmer's watch, smugglers are now using larger boats imported from China in order to maximise their profits. More comment on that. And in that speech yesterday, Starmer also hinted at tax hikes to fill the UK's £50 billion black hole, but promises no rises for income tax, VAT or national insurance. Economists are warning cuts or increases in inheritance tax, capital gains are inevitable. We need growth, by the way, not more taxes. That's how it should be working. Have they really got a handle on this? Details to come. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. I'll talk to Robert in just a second. Reference who the next Prime Minister could be. First, John is in Sutton. How are you doing, John?
Afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon to you.
You are a fantastic presenter.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Absolutely.
I'm slightly dying here of man flu, believe it or not, but don't worry about that.
Well, I would never have known. You deserve a medal, mate.
I've had about 17 litres of water since 1 o'clock. I'm not kidding you.
No, I die when I get it. I'm like close to death whenever I get flu.
Yeah,
indeed. Ian, that conference yesterday, you're right. It was sinister. It really was. It was all done with like a contemptuous mocking for sort of patriotism and the waving of the flags and that. It was all. None of it was genuine. It was all aimed at reform.
Yeah.
And I hope that it was. It was mocking and contemptuous. And I hope that the electorate give them their answer next May, Ian.
I tell you
really do.
I think it's going to be such a kicking that we won't have ever seen the like. I mean, if Wales turns reform and reform begin to run an entire country, then that's really game over. I mean, unless they absolutely muck it up royally in the 2 or 3 years that follow. But as long as they don't, Scotland probably won't go reform, but it won't go Labour either. So you've got that to contend with. And then the local elections. Starmer will have to walk the plank after that.
He's going to, Ian. He's going to. You asked who's most likely to be the next Prime Minister.
Yeah.
It's Nigel Farage, without a doubt, and next May will be the catalyst for an early election.
What if there's not an early election, but Starmer still goes? Who replaces Starmer?
But it won't matter, Ian, because if they get such a pasting, which I'm really expecting them to get, the pressure from the public and the press and everything will be so strong on them to call an election.
Yeah.
I honestly don't believe they'll be able to resist it, Ian.
You could be right. You could be right.
I think it could be pretty much all over apart from come next May.
Unless they bring... I mean, there's a lot of people getting in touch, John, saying, do you know what they're going to do? They're going to bring Angela Rayner back. She might not be your cup of tea or my cup of tea, but she'll do what the left need, and that will be their best shot at success come 2029.
Well, if that's their best shot, they've got no chance.
Well, yeah, if that's the best you've got, I mean...
Yeah. the only way, Ian, that could go against reform is if the little weasels all gather together and try and, gang up against reform, the Lib Dems, Labour, even the Tories.
Well, maybe. Could the Tories... Could the Tories, somehow make a curious comeback in Manchester this weekend?
No. Because look, you've got to remember that I'd say, 80% of Reform support were ex-Tories. They're not going back.
That's exactly right.
They're too scared.
Well,
to
not
go
just,
back. They
not
don't
just.
trust at all.
I mean, the front bench of Reform, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, are ex-Tories.
Yeah.
So they're not going to go back, are they? I mean, well, certainly those two won't. But it's kind of too late, really. That element of the vote has already gone to Farage.
It's gone. It's gone. It's not going back, mate. And now they're going to decimate Labour, Ian. They really are. It's Labour are going to be next on the list for decimation from Reform. You wait and see what happens up and down the country come May.
They're going to be left with this curious... Yeah, I can't wait, to be honest, John. I can't wait to be on air during those times. It's brilliant. Listen, thank you, John. Thank you for your nice comments at the beginning as well. Really great to have you on. That's John in Sutton. Let's go to Hertfordshire. This is Robert. How you doing, Robert?
Hi, Ian.
Hiya.
In answer to your question, don't laugh, because I'm not looking at the telly. I'm on my phone. But don't laugh. But it's a double-barrel question. It's a trick question what you've asked.
Who will be the next Prime Minister?
A trick answer.
Go on.
The answer: the next PM of this country will be David Laming. Now,
I love
don't laugh. I'll tell you for why. Because he's going to get the sack Starmer, and he's going to stand in. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be in a job forever. But he will be. Your question was, who's going to be the next PM? And it follows by form that the deputy would stand in while they have the election. So but you know what? When I usually speak to you, I usually come up with a little phrase, like I did with the coins. If you remember what I did.
I remember the coins well. Yeah.
Right, well, I'll tell you what they're doing now, Labour. You know when you sit down Christmas and have a game of cards with your family and you get the cards out of the box, but there's always one card left in the box that you can't get out, right? Now, that's what Labour's doing. They've pulled out now their last card, which is the nasty race card. That's the only thing they can do because, well done to Labour, they've done away with a complete class of people.
Yeah.
Now, there's either the left or far right. No, so all us normal people, if we're not left, we're far right. So what happened to all the ordinary Joes?
Yeah.
So well done, Labour. You've done away with a class of people.
Tell me this, Robert. I've never known the answer to this. I've even asked people in my neck of the woods what this is all about. Why do some Tories that don't like the Tory party, some obviously have gone to Reform in pretty large numbers, but why do some of the others go to the Liberal Democrats?
I don't know.
I mean, what's that?
I really
don't
don't
quite
know.
seriously, what is that all about?
Well, you know what I was thinking of? During not the last election, but the Corbyn election, they was faking that. I don't even know what her name is. The leader of the Lib Dems, she was going to be the next woman Prime Minister. I can't even remember her name. What's she doing now? Working in Sainsbury's?
Jo Swinson.
Well, there you go. What happened to her?
I think I'm right on that. Jo Swinson. Yeah, what did happen to her? She lost her seat, didn't she? And there was a famous moment where Nicola Sturgeon kind of laughed at the idea that she lost her seat, and she got a bit of stick for that because, you know, the protocol is you're not meant to laugh even if it's an opposition. That's not the spirit of politics and all that garbage. Jo Swinson was... I think I'm right in saying they've had loads of leaders. They had Ming Campbell, they had Charles Kennedy, who was quite effective, a very good operator, no longer with us. They had... I can't think of his name now, the kind of born-again Christian guy that couldn't bring himself to talk about what he thought about gay issues. Tim Farron. Farron was he was a right old political mess. He was just a stew of nonsense, that bloke, like a human pipe cleaner who had nothing to add to the argument. I think it was Jo Swinson. But why do Tories go there? What's that all about?
I don't know. You know what, though? I remember saying to you that after the last election, I joined Reform just to cheer myself up. But I said I was very sceptical of Nigel Farage, only over one thing, what he said about bringing Shamina again, maybe back into the country. Now, so I went right off of him. But you know what? The more I watch him on the Enemy's show, GB News, every night. And I've got, you know what? It's a bit like Trump. Him and Trump, they're like Marmite. You know, it's the same. you know, I don't like Trump, but you got to. Although I don't think, I'll be honest with you, I think he's going to get mugged off again in the Middle East. There's no way that Hamas are going to agree to that.
It's looking a bit unlikely, isn't it? Vince Cable, I forgot to mention, Robert, by the way. Vince Cable.
Oh, that was him.
Vince
Yeah.
Cable, then Joe Swinson. She was only there from July to December 2019. And then the bloke we got now, who loves monkeying around on water slides and marching in bands, banging his own drum, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? The state of the country, right? You've got two people now who have just come to the front. You've got Jeremy Corbyn, who should have been kicked out of politics years ago. I remember going back to the IRA days when they called him a useful idiot. Yeah. And he was, you know, hating this country. And then you've got a war criminal with Tony Blair. And they're going to make him governor of Palestine. I don't know what his title's going to be, but you can only imagine him liking that. He will insist on a big motorcade as he's ferried through the moth-eaten, brick-laden streets of Gaza. We will watch with interest. Listen, I've got to move, Robert. You've been great as ever. Thank you. Robert in Hertfordshire. Let's move to what is happening across the Atlantic. The big federal funding bill has come to a complete halt in the US Congress. It's all standstill territory. The Senate is at loggerheads over US taxpayers funding the US public sector. Park rangers, air traffic control, bin men all face no pay and won't be going to work. What is happening here? And what is Trump, or is this what Trump actually wants in a curious political manoeuvre? Is this by design and his golden opportunity to finally drain the swamp? Let's speak with Laurie Laird, US economic commentator. Laurie, good afternoon to you. Well, one thing everybody could agree in, this is a very serious place that America has found itself in right now.
Yeah, it really is. Look, you know, government shutdowns are something we've discussed, you know, quite a few times over the years. I think the big difference with this one is that I don't see how this one will be resolved. You know, there's no easy fix for this one. Both parties are so polarized. I know that's a word we use all the time, but you can't see what is going to break this deadlock. It will be which party thinks that they're losing more in the court of public opinion. But it could take weeks before that kind of thing plays out.
Yeah. So what has happened? And by the way, the Leader of the House, Mike Johnson, is currently speaking as we speak.
I've got one. Sorry about that. You may hear it. I've got one ear on that.
That's good. No, I would expect nothing else from a pro such as you, Laurie. That's brilliant.
Say more like that. You say that and I'll be on anytime.
You are multitasking like mad here, which is fabulous. This idea that, or this theory that Trump might tacitly quite like this battle. Any truth in that?
He's almost said as much. I mean, last night he said, you know, sometimes good things come out of shutdown. So I think that he thinks he can win this PR war. The other thing that Trump has said is that this is a good opportunity for government agencies, which take their orders straight from the Oval Office. Yeah. He suggests that these agencies could cut hundreds of thousands of jobs. Before the start of this term, we would have thought, well, that's a bit fanciful. That's Trump just, you know, sort of speaking words that may not make sense. But we have learned that what Trump means often in this administration, what he says he actually means. He has no problem with cutting huge numbers of government employees. Now, whether this is legal or not is an open question, but the legal process moves a lot more slowly than Donald Trump does.
Well, indeed.
So we could see, you know, at least announcements of government cutbacks.
So we've got around 750, 750,000 federal employees facing unpaid leave. Just talk us through it briefly, if you could, Laurie, in sort of Sesame Street language, if you like. How did we end up here? What's happened?
This is tough to be brief on, but where we are is that the current funding bill that ran, or the old funding bill that ran out at midnight U.S. time last night, was simply an extension of the last funding bill. So the two sides have not been able to hammer out a funding bill in over a year. Now, what the Republicans want to do, and they have the reins here, they can make the suggestions because they're the majority party in both houses. What they would like to do is extend current funding for another 7 weeks. That seems pretty benign, doesn't it? Yeah. But the Democrats are under pressure from their base to do something. I mean, I think wherever you are on the political divide, I think we can agree that the Democrats have, to a certain extent, crawled into a fetal position. They have not provided effective opposition.
Sure.
I think the Democrats are feeling right now, we have to do something. We have to show that we are on the map somewhere. So what the Democrats have said is that there are subsidies to a lot of healthcare insurance programs that will expire at the end of the year, according to what's in the big, beautiful bill. They want to see those extended. And that's not an unreasonable request. There are some poorer Americans that will be hit quite badly with healthcare costs. So they would like to see those extended, and that is their price for agreeing a short-term funding bill. That's the contours. Now, the Republicans can easily turn around and say, wait a second, those subsidies don't expire until the end of the year. You've got plenty of time to negotiate those. But on the other side, for public relations purposes, the Democrats can say, wait a second, the House of Representatives, all the Republicans, they've gone out of town. The House is on recess. At least we've stuck around to try and negotiate something. So you can see how the PR battle might shape up. And again, I think this is the most important battle.
We will see. It's certainly not going to be dull. It's serious times over there.
Never
Laurie,
is these days.
Absolutely right. Great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Laurie Laird, US economic commentator with us. Just giving us the outline of what is going on over there, but could it pan out rather well for Donald Trump, who might say, yeah, we can drain the swamp now because there's employees that clearly, look, we made it work, don't even need them. Is that the direction of travel? 0344 499 1000. We're going to pause momentarily. We'll be back and find out in a moment if we've got a Voice of Doom winner. Have we got one? We'll tell you next, right here on Talk.
However, actually, what this is doing is sowing division and it's sowing societal fracturing. And I think they need to be very careful about what they are doing because they are alienating huge chunks of this country.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This comes from Paul. It says, no park rangers in the US. Who's going to feed Yogi and Boo Boo? Yeah, now that's interesting, that, because Dave, who's on the desk today, knows exactly what that refers to. Finn, do you know what that refers to? Finn's going, yeah, I know who Yogi Bear is. Yeah. So, yeah, but they're not in Yellowstone National Park. They're in Jellystone National Park because they're cartoon characters. Yogi Bear. I never liked Yogi Bear. I always thought he was a rubbish. I just thought he was a rubbish bear. And Boo Boo was just as... Boo Boo was like the Scrappy... You know when Scooby-Doo introduced Scrappy-Doo to the equation? And it all went absolutely pear. Devastation in my childhood when suddenly... Because it's all about Scooby and Shaggy, and it was a very mysterious collection of people monkeying around in the back of a van, wasn't it, most of the time, going to empty houses. I mean, when you really think about it, what was actually going on there? So... and then they just made it worse. They thought, oh, we've got to get the kids and make it really cool. So they bought... Scrappy-Doo in, who was, I think, Scooby's nephew or little cousin. Isn't it funny how we've gone retro all of a sudden in the middle of a current affairs phone-in? And it wrecked it, but Yogi Bear never quite did it for me. And there was that park ranger and the muskrat thing, wasn't there? There was all of that going on. And Finn doesn't even remember it because he was... I think he told me, I think he said something there. I don't know what he said to me. The second word was off. Let's go back to your calls. Tom in Glasgow. Tom, you want to talk about Yogi Bear, Tom? Yeah, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you. I remember Yogi.
Yeah.
My point today is I've been listening to the TV over the last 24 hours, trying to take in the Labour conference, which I didn't watch. But I feel quite ashamed that when I believe in the voting rights of every UK citizen.
Yep.
And when I go to vote, I'm proud to go and vote. Whether I win or whether I don't, I accept democracy 100%. Always have done.
100%, yeah, I agree.
Right. But I feel going next year to vote, I will be classed as, you can call me racist. Whatever you want to call me, that Prime Minister's made me feel ashamed to go and mark on a cross on this ballot paper
who you want to support.
Other than Labour.
Yeah,
correct.
And when you put it like that, that's absolutely outrageous that the Prime Minister of the day has made you feel uncomfortable about voting, and maybe even unsafe.
Well, I mean, I'm just outside Glasgow now, and when you see what's going on, that's fine. But when I go to vote, I like to go, take my paper, vote, and next morning, see who's in, and we go and we move forward.
Yeah.
But now I'm in a situation where, as a Christian, I feel utterly ashamed of my country. What other people outside Britain are looking at, considering what we've done in the past, the people who have fought for the freedom of speech, who are no longer here, some never came back to us, and I feel absolutely outraged at what he's done and what he's accusing me of being. And he's not giving me my civil rights as a free voting British citizen.
That is a great analysis of what happened, and not enough people are making that point, but that is brilliant. That brings it down to the real basic, the nuts and bolts of what Starmer said yesterday, and a brilliantly articulated reason as to why it's dangerous speak and completely unnecessary. Listen, great, Tom, brilliant call. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
No Prime Minister, particularly a Prime Minister, but no politician, no Prime Minister should be going down that territory and going down that road, and he did it, and he's exploited it, and all of his minions have exploited it as well. Robert's in Gwent. How you doing, Robert? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
I'm just saying, I'm seeing your thing about who's going to be the next PM of the UK. I mean, unfortunately, that's likely to be at least 4 years away.
True.
If Starmer gets ousted, everybody says it could be by Christmas or by May next year. The question should be, who's going to take over for him? Because they haven't got a brain cell between any of them.
Well, that's going to be the problem, isn't it? Because the obvious candidates would be David Lammy, and some say Angela Rayner. I mean, she's still an MP. She could be in that position. I mean, it's a bit odd to get a tax dodger as your Prime Minister, but nonetheless, that might be where it ends up.
One of the other names that's been put forward is this Ed Miliband, Natty Ed Miliband.
Oh, for God's sake. I mean, he gave it a go once before, didn't he?
Yeah, I just watched his speech at the conference, the Labour Party conference.
Well done. Somebody had to.
Yeah, I just turned over and I thought, well, he's deranged. He's absolutely a nutter.
I am gonna watch it on the way home on the train, so I might get some funny looks.
You've got to watch it. I'm going to say he's so delusional. He's calling all of the reform people racist, fascists. He's totally lost the plot.
Oh, is Miliband gone down the path as well?
Oh yeah. You want to watch?
I mean, well, clearly with no consideration for people like Tom, our last caller, Robert, who made a really good point about the dangers of that kind of speak.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm going to vote reform. So I'm just a Welsh lad. And I'm certainly not racist. Some of my best friends are Asians or Nigerians. I'm not racist at all, and we're not racist at all.
Well, I don't know anybody who, I know lots of people who support Nigel Farage and reform, and quite literally not one of them you could in any shape or form describe as a racist. And some of them not even from this country, or the same kind of demographic background, whether it's colour or religion or whatever. It's the way it goes. Listen, Robert, I've got to move. Thank you very much indeed. That was Robert in Gwent. I think he's just catching himself on the radio at the last moment there, but good point. Dan in Gloucester says, talking about Scrappy Doo ruining things, do you remember the abomination that was Godzuki? It ruined my childhood, says Dan. Now, Dave is nodding along. Who was Godzuki? Oh, as in a Godzilla thing? I mean, what, a baby Godzilla? Oh, get in the bin, you hairy weirdo. A baby Godzilla? I'm seeing pictures of it now. This is an abomination. Dan, I'm vicariously experiencing what Dan felt as a kid. Did the baby... So it was in cartoon form, right? I mean, it's not like they made one of those big kind of Hong Kong, King Kong versus Godzilla. They're always worth a watch, aren't they? And then suddenly a little dinky one popped up and went, hello. And it all went, and then Macaulay Culkin came in and said, can I take him home? And everybody went home and had apple pie, and it was the great American story. And what's wrong with monsters? We live in a diverse world. Let them climb the Empire State and wreck the place. Who cares? 0344 499 1000. So it was, cartoon style. Godzuki. Who came up with that? You should see the stuff my kids watch now. I mean, Netflix will offer a whole array of other kind of, like those kiddie... I mean, they've always been around, those little dramas. They're kind of sitcoms for children. And they're so cringy. Not quite as cringy as those YouTube channels that offer... And I don't know, Finn, if this was in your age group as well. No, probably not. So you get a very rich family, who are often kind of Russian American or Ukrainian American, live in a massive house always with about 6 kids, and they run around and do silly things in the house and get freebies. It started with that Ryan, you know the kid Ryan, the YouTuber Ryan. He started out as a kid. He's a squillionaire now, just doing silly stuff. And this kind of culture is what we're now racing our kids on. It's an outrage. That's where we've got to. Where there was obviously nothing wrong with Scooby-Doo and his mates, as I said, monkeying around in the back of a van at midnight. Perfectly normal. Didn't affect us. Let's do the voice of doom payoff. This was the voice we've been asking you to guess for the last 12 days.
Got off to a pretty messy start.
Do you know who that is? These are some of the guesses. John Prescott, no. Ed Miliband, no. Matthew Parris comes up nearly every day. I'm going to have to start saying it's not Matthew. It does sound a bit like Matthew Parris. Paddy Ashdown, no. John Biffin, no. Keir Starmer, it is not. William Wardgrave, no. Rory Stewart or Tom Watson. Not the right answer. We didn't get a right answer, which means it rolls over day 13 tomorrow on the programme, as long as I survive the man flu overnight. Back with more from you on the way. Just gone 3:30. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This one in from Yotis. I'll do Rob's in a second. Yotis says, love the show, Ian. I would say Starmer is bang in trouble now. Like Mike Graham says, he will be gone before Christmas. Well, certainly after that, thank you for that. After those local elections, it could look grim, and that's only about 33 weeks away, by the way. Rob says the only problem with an early election is that reform won't be ready in time if it's too early. There is a very good point to that. If suddenly they sprung an election, it would be really hard. I don't think they will, because they know they would still lose it. But if they sprung one, you know, in the next 1 year, that would scupper a lot of parties. And Vinny says, hi, I'm a Sikh from Glasgow. I'm 45, never voted before. I will be voting for Nigel Farage this time, and so will my family. Well, obviously, Vinny is a mad racist, Sikh or not, and don't take my word for it. Take Keir Starmer's word for it. Vinny, thank you, mate, for that. Really appreciate it. And this story as well, as the world goes increasingly digital. Hackers are exploiting weak spots to infiltrate databases. You've seen how many of these stories we're seeing of late. Major brands like M&S, Jaguar Land Rover still not back on their feet. Harrods have been hit by breaches, and Labour are pushing mandatory digital IDs. How can companies and the government safeguard the public from cyber attacks? Let's speak to ransomware negotiator Richard Foster. Richard, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon, Ian. It's great to speak to you.
It's lovely to have you on with us. I mean, this really is on the up, isn't it? I mean, it's not normally we'd be championing and shouting about industries and businesses that are doing well. This is really something else. It's almost the new terrain for warfare.
It is, absolutely. We seem to be having so many of these incidents occurring on UK companies as well. Like you've mentioned there, the Co-op Jaguar Land Rover, the nursery hack that's just occurred, Harrods, Collins Aerospace. Every week there seems to be another hack, another ransomware incident. We seem to be getting hit very badly at the moment.
What's the deal here then? As far as I can ascertain, I saw there was a story on the BBC where one of their producers or somebody in their newsroom was offered a few quid, well, more than a few quid, you'll be familiar with this, Richard, a slice of the blackmail money, as it were, if he would hand over his details, and that would allow the hacker into the system, and then they could do whatever they want to do. Is it just about, at this level, I know this sort of espionage goes on at other levels with databases and things, but is this really just about we can mess with your system and almost bring your company to its knees unless you give us 10 million quid or whatever the fee is? Is it that simple?
It is, to a degree. I think you've hit the nail on the head. You've got your espionage, your nation states are involved in hacking at that level, but the majority of this is either organised gangs or disorganised gangs, often teenagers, people who are quite young, who have fallen into this world and realised that they can make substantial amounts of money. And it is like with all crime, I'm previously ex-police, and like with a lot of crime, it's financially motivated, which is exactly this. It's an easy way to get rich for them.
What percentage of companies pay out the ransom?
Well, it's an interesting one. It varies. There's been a recent report by Hiscox, I believe it was, an insurance company, to say 80% of people who they had dealt with had paid out. My own experience is the numbers are much less than that, and I think it may be they are basing it on an insurance customers that they've dealt with themselves as to who is paying out and who's not. I think it's more probably towards the 50% mark. Yeah. It would be lovely if companies didn't have to pay, but the big reality of it is they've got some really hard decisions to make.
Yeah, 100%.
And those decisions are they going to end up having to make redundant their staff and their mortgages? And it just goes on and on and on like that. They've got some massive decisions to make because companies go bust if it's allowed to continue and they can't access their computer systems.
How do you
plan for this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, if you do pay one of these people off and you give them a substantial amount of money, how can you guarantee that they're going to just go away? Do they then release something? Do they? You know, what sort of arrangement is made with the hacker so that the company can be satisfied they can rework and rewire their system so it can't be hacked again?
Yeah, there is no guarantee with this. And that's one of the things I'll say with any company that approaches us and say, there is no guarantee. If you make any payment, they are criminals at the end of the day. And whatever they've said doesn't necessarily stand up that they're going to delete the data they've stolen. It's been proven time and time again that the hackers who've stolen data still have that data on their computers when the police identify them and arrest them. So there is no guarantee. It's about minimising the damage often and trying to get the best deal for the victims.
I was talking, I did a kind of a video thing with a company that does exactly what you do. They were an American company, and I was talking to a couple of the guys there. And he said, and I'm sure this has been your experience, that you would be staggered how inept the security is of some companies that you would imagine they're a big company, they're well known, they've got a big brand, you assume they've got the absolute best, and you walk into the office and they're running Windows 95 or something, and you think, seriously? And he made the point that he's gone to meetings before and, you know, to big corporations. They said, oh, we don't need you. And then what he's done is reeled off, you know, a load of facts and stats about the CEO. He just simply got in the car park because he knew how to do it and said, yeah, your kid goes to this school. We know that you do this 3 times a year. You've just spent 3,000 quid on a new bathroom. And the guy's going, how do you know this? He said, well, that's how easy it is to get into your system. And of course, it is interesting that although we don't want to victim blame here because that's not what this is about, it is still surprising how many big names, whether they're high street names or corporate giants, are not geared up.
Yeah, you're right. A lot can be reduced. You've talked about the baddies doing open source intelligence gathering, which is what you were talking about, that information that's accessible to anybody. Things like training and where companies consider what would happen if we were hacked. That a lot more boards should consider this and be running scenarios. And I'm not talking just a technical scenario. I'm talking involving the whole company as to how they would run and operate. And if you can do that beforehand, that is fantastic. A lot of it is down to training, I think, with these IT companies. And you've talked about the bigger companies there. A lot of smaller companies have no IT support. It's the founder, it's the partner who's doing a bit of IT.
Yeah.
Even those people, and they might be turning over quite a large amount of money.
Sure.
And you could just have a virtual CISO, for example, a virtual security stack that can come in and support those people, but they probably don't even know about that. They've never heard of it. And it's about them being able to reach out, and maybe the government should be giving some of this as advice. I certainly do whenever I meet clients.
Yeah.
There is lots of ways to protect yourself from this. You don't want to be the low-hanging fruit.
Indeed. I made the point at the beginning about, you know, this is the new sort of terrain for warfare almost. Now, you know, people might not lose sleep because a clothing company or a food shop has had their system breached. It might be expensive for that company, but of course it doesn't take much of a leap of imagination to at least wonder what, I don't know, China is always the obvious area we point to. And if they collapsed our NHS system, for example, we're in, you know, you almost don't need bombs and planes and things these days, because if you did that, the damage would be so substantial, there would be real life casualties, literally, as well as an entire system destroyed, which runs a huge part of our lives. I mean, that's an area one hopes that governments around the world are well and truly on.
I think governments are alive to this, and the Internet of Things and control systems that control things like dams, electricity services, water, those kind of essential services, they're very much alive to the fact that nation states might be looking at that, and this is a new type of warfare that can be used. And I suspect it already is being used to a certain degree. We just don't necessarily hear about it, which would be appropriate.
Indeed. Well, listen, watch with interest. Richard, we will speak again. Thank you for your time, sir. I really appreciate that. Richard Foster, ransomware negotiator. There's going to be so much more of this. And whether the person perpetrating the crime is successful in getting the money they want, or whether they just mess up the system, either way, this is extraordinary. On a lighter note, and I think we should have light and shade on times during times like this, Martin says, you're missing a trick. How about a feature on the best cartoon character ever? My vote is Muttley. Never said much, but had a laugh as iconic as that of Sid James, a legend. You're absolutely spot on. Do you know what? We once interviewed Muttley. I'm not kidding you. Annoyingly, it wasn't me that interviewed him. This was the voice actor called Don Messick, and Don Messick was responsible for Scooby-Doo, I think possibly even Yogi Bear, and Muttley. And we sent a producer to interview him. And God, I wish I'd gone. But here was the killer. We got Don Messick to do a jingle for us, a kind of Ian Collins as Scooby-Doo. Ian Collins? Ooh, that wasn't very good, but you take the point. That. And somebody said if you'd employed Don Messick to do that, like as a job, he probably wouldn't have been allowed to do it because it would have been copyright. But if you had to pay him, it would have been thousands. But we got him to do the Scooby-Doo voice. He could no longer do Muttley after he gave up smoking, he told us in this interview, like years before. He couldn't do the Muttley laugh, which was devastating. But he did, he did loads of them. This guy was incredible. And I don't know where it went or how it happened, but we used to play this out on the air. And people would ring in and go, who did your Scooby-Doo impression? And we go, Scooby-Doo. It's literally Scooby-Doo. It was golden in radio terms. It was like as good as it got. And we lost it somehow. I have no idea where it went. I don't know what happened to it, or there doesn't seem to be a copy anywhere. It's just one of those things, I suppose. There's a few like that, by the way. I'm just all coming back to me of interviews we lost. We had some beauties. 0344 499 1000. Jeremy Carr's going to be here after the news at 4. Of course, he will pop in between now and then to tell us what is going on. And we're back with more comment from you coming next on Talk.
think David Lammy must resign immediately. And then I would call upon Merseyside police to carry out an investigation into the Labour Party that there are a large number of offences, and I don't want to get bogged down in technicalities, that the public broadly know as incitement to violence. And I think we've seen them at the Labour Party conference. I think that's disgraceful. I have friends in the Labour Party. I have friends on the left. I hope that they are utterly shocked and disgraced.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You have to plug your microphone back in when you walk into the studio. And that was a test that I was running just to see how astute Finn was. On this occasion, he didn't spot it. We'll let it slide just on this one occasion. We'll see how he gets on next time, but not a good start, really. Neil says there's approximately 1 million paying dads paying child maintenance. The majority are on low incomes, 0-hour contracts, and universal credit does not top him up to get him above the line to survive. So he resorts to giving up and claiming full benefits. This reduces his CMS obligation to £3.50 a week. That's a great point. And the second point, says Neil, in working Britain, separated families, single mums, has gone sharply from 2 million pre-COVID to 3 million. What does that message about welfare reforms bias that facilitates women going their own way to secure assets, welfare and work, using kids as a weapon or a token? There is a whole show we could do about the injustice that dads face in particular. There's a whole gamut of strands to that discussion. I know it's not exclusively, and there are some bad dads out there who've done horrendous things who don't deserve much sympathy, but there's many more who are really good dads trying to make ends meet, struggling like Billy-O, are denied access to their own kids, have to pay an awful lot of money that they haven't actually got. It's rigged against them. The court system rigged against dads, the legal system, the everything that surrounds this area of family life, despite it being the 21st century. And I get the disproportionality when it comes to the amount of work that mums do and the different kind of roles they play in the early years of a child's life. But boy, is that thing stacked against blokes. Simple as that. We could do a whole show on it. Paul's in Southend on a very different issue. Paul, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing? Good
very
show.
Good.
Great show.
Thank
great
you
show.
very
Not
much.
good. Great show. Just a quick random one. I was talking to your colleague earlier. Do you know when I pay for my prescriptions? I presume you do.
But yeah, of course, yes. Right. I wish I didn't, but I do, yeah.
Right, exactly. They were my words. Anyway, so I'm queuing up in a local pharmacy, and there was about 7 or 8 people in front of me that said no, they don't pay. Right. And then when it comes to me, do you pay? Yeah, unfortunately I do. Having a bit of a joke with a guy. Pays me £10 for some antibiotics, whatever. I don't really like going down there that much anyway. So it goes away. But my point is, when you hear of things like that, the NHS is on its last legs, on its knees, whatever. There's enough of a kerfuffle in the government as it is at the moment. But why don't they, why don't they charge them £1 or something like that then for the people that are unemployed or benefits or foreign or immigrants or anything like that? Because you're hearing all these things about free dentistry, free doctors and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, who's paying for it?
Wow.
Right, so I know it's only a weird one to say, like, take £1. If you're, but cap it at £5, £3, you get a lot of money back. It's just so frustrating when you hear things of, no, I don't pay, and then there's me, Muggins, yeah, I'll pay. I'm not knocking the people that are ill. Not doing that at all. If you need help, then you should receive it.
100%, but there is that. I don't know whether these things, Paul, are too difficult for governments to work out. I mean, it's often said, when they talk about means testing stuff, and then the answer that always comes back is, well, it sounds like a good idea, but actually it costs more money to put that in place. So that's why we kind of leave it alone. I would have got that a few years ago, but we live in a digital world now where you can do all manner of things. I can't believe they can't means test all of these areas quickly and swiftly.
Well, surely, because, like, example, when I come out of the place at that pharmacy, people got buy enough. If you can afford to smoke, then smoke. If you can afford to go and drink, surely they can give £1 back to the NHS that they are getting all this free. I know we're on the immigrant tip at the moment with everyone.
But whoever it happens to be.
Whoever it happens to.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's immigrant or not. I mean, the fact is there is a clear injustice going. I mean, God, if somebody really got an auditor in and went to the root of the abuse of the system, it would... We'd be sitting here gobsmacked for the next 10 decades going, what the hell?
No,
listen, it's a... I've got
just a weird one.
I love it. Paul, thank you.
I know,
Thank you, mate, for that. That's
Top
Paul.
man, take care, all the best.
You too.
Cheers,
Paul in Southend on taxes and the like. We were talking about the kind of curious stories about cartoons as well. When you think about how weird Scooby-Doo was, there was four humans and a dog lived in the back of a van and monkeyed around the place at midnight. And then one that's come in here says, never mind cartoon characters. Never mind cartoon characters. I grew up watching Tarzan, a half-naked man who lived up a tree with a small boy and a monkey.
Me Tarzan, you Jane. Couldn't do that now, could you?
Couldn't do that.
Jane's got a penis. Let's be perfectly honest nowadays. Jane's got a penis and doesn't live in a tree because that would be disrespectful. She's in a 4-star hotel. Jane's in a 4-star hotel and she's got a penis.
That is such fake news.
No, it's not, Donald. Shut up.
It's true.
How are you?
Good as gold at this. That last message just made me...
Yesterday was the most extraordinary show I've done. It was just like ridiculous, the response.
After the Farage and the Starmer
followed by Lammy going, I think he sort of spent time with the Hitler Youth. That took 22 minutes for him to retract, the lying git.
And in fact, he never said sorry, did he? He said, Mr Farage has made it clear. He's made it clear, but you can't say sorry.
I thought it was really interesting that he backtracked today instantly.
Yeah.
Because nobody had the foresight and the intelligence to look him in the eyes and go, you do realise doing what you're doing, you're basically calling millions and millions of people the R word, racists.
Yeah.
So we set up a helpline yesterday on JK's Drive Show with the R tune music and said if you feel traumatised by having been called a racist, please feel and free to phone and I'll talk you through it.
That's brilliant. And you've got to...
Shut up, Donald, for God's sake.
I used to work with Simon Bates.
Did you?
Well, he worked on the original Talk Radio.
Do you think that when Simon Bates was a young boy, he used to get letters addressed to Master... What? It wouldn't be Mr Bates, would it?
Back in the day, we had this letter in from Jean.
Sorry, who is that an impression of?
That's
you
what
sound like
Bates-
Eddie Izzard on steroids.
Jean says, I've never had a lover since...
I'll take you back to the time. It was brilliant radio, wasn't it?
Just, yeah.
That you and I grew up. Did you used to record the top 40 and play it back? And pretend to be a DJ with a hairbrush?
Yeah. In fact, I was playing my little boy last night when I was playing him a clip of me when I was number 2 in the charts.
As what?
Well, when I was on TalkSport, we recorded a World Cup song.
Did you?
Come on, Eileen. Come on, England. And
Come on, England.
It wasn't the
Not
official.
Eileen, England.
Yeah, it wasn't the official song, but it got to number 2. We had to go down to the BBC and record.
Did you get any money?
No, not at all. And it was number 2.
Were you on TalkSport?
I was, only for 17 years.
But you don't know anything about sport, really, do you?
Where did you get that
What
from?
football team do you support?
Chelsea.
Who won the Ryder Cup?
Chelsea.
Who won the Derby last year? What horse?
Oh,
Chelsea.
Chelsea. Yeah.
So what's been getting them going today? The same stuff.
We've had quite a lot, to be honest, in particularly on the back of the Farage. Who will be the next Prime Minister? We were asking that question. Could Kemi Badenoch, actually, this weekend they're in Manchester for their conference, could she suddenly pull something out the bag?
She's going to pull something out the bag, I can tell you this, and this is not